Hey guys, it's Doa. You may think to yourself, hey, Doa's too nice to be on Thorin's channel. Why is he there? And you're right. He's locked me in his closet, and I'm being forced to record this. Help.
Right, this is going to be the pilot episode. I don't even know why I'm saying that. It's not like it's going to go in front of some like network executives and they're like, sorry, we didn't greenlight the project. We're going to go a different route. We're going with another LS podcast. Like, damn it. That guy gets all the breaks. Like, obviously, it's just the first episode, isn't it? Like, as long as I do another one, there will be another episode. So if people don't know, this show, you obviously don't, it's a brand new one. I don't even announce things. In fact, there you go. Little word to the wise. I gave Monty this little rant on Summoning Insight, which is, if you don't want people in esports to constantly be like seeming entitled, like, where's this thing? Or you said this thing would be out on Monday. Like, why is it Tuesday, 1 second into Tuesday and it's now? Like, here's a pro tip for everyone. Don't just constantly promise people stuff. Don't tell people like that you're going to bring stuff out. Like, just drop it. Just do it. Because if you don't do it, logically, they're going to be mad. And if you end up dropping it anyway, then there's no problem. They're going to see it. So that's been one of my secrets, is stuff just appears out of nowhere. And then you just assume it's all fine. Yeah. So the series is called Thorin's Rotations. Because listen, if fucking Monty won't monetize that term, I will absolutely take that without the copyright. No, but the reason why, right, is because you have to think of it like a unique talk show name. And generally, I'm not a fan of making it like literally something in the game League of Legends, because it always tends to be a bit cheesy. So the concept for this show is what I actually was originally going to do when I did Narrative Wake, which is I was going to have, there was loads of people I wanted to do shows with, but obviously you can't just do like 8 talk shows a week. I mean, you could, but you just drag yourself so thin it'd be no point. So what I wanted to do was have all these great experts and analysts and cool scene people that I like, and I would have a rotating panel. So for example, if one of them I wanted to talk to about something in the LPL or whatever, well, if Atlus had been there, maybe he would have been the person, or Raz at the time. If it was something to do with just LCS, be one of the people, maybe the Croms or someone. Some of these people who they have specialties, and the idea would be then they didn't have to commit to doing like 4 or 5 a month or something. So it's going to be like that. So for this particular episode, so the way I've purposely left it there, you see the way I did the Atlas there, I kept like the tension. So technically they don't know who the co-host for this one is. Actually, the co-host is Ashley, the one that I didn't mention yet. So Ashley Kang here, you will know her from my shows and obviously all the interviews she does around the LCK. And in fact, has done interviews at MSI and at Worlds. I know the latter part because I paid for the part of that, but whatever, we'll put that to one side. The mistakes were made in that sense, actually. It's just we had to make good on them. So what I'll say is she is the founder of Korizon, which again, I'll just do the light joke, like that esports organization that, you know, definitely isn't just turning a cop people. Like, please don't give her the Travis Gafford treatment. She doesn't deserve that. So no one does actually. Even Travis, you know what? Even Travis doesn't. I have to say, I'll give him the fair play on that one. So she's going to be my co-host, especially when we do a lot of the LCK stuff, because she's literally even though it's kind of a cursed term at this point in time, she's what you call like an embedded reporter. She's in the scene, literally, and she's obviously Korean, so she has a much better ability to actually know what these people think, as opposed to when people just have to go off interviews and that are translated or rumours that get out to the West. Like famously, one of the things I always hated, unfortunately, about LCK and LPL is there is so much stuff on people's Gamepedia pages that's like, I don't know if that's verified. That seems like, you know, some of it's just made up. Like that's just something that someone guessed at or speculated or heard something one time, you know, like they one time played a song on their stream and suddenly that's their favourite musician or whatever in the Gamepedia. So Ashley, what do you think about being part of this? Because one thing I always say about you is you always downplay yourself too much. Like you come on all the shows, right? And even though you are a journalist, you give like actual analysis of the LCK and your thoughts, and you even beat me in that prediction that I referenced earlier. But then afterwards you're like, but I'm just a journalist. I don't really know anything about the game, and you know, like other people should talk instead of me. You do that like Korean humility. So why did you accept this role? Isn't this a bit intimidating to be a co-host of Thorin?
I don't know. I guess it's a bit of an everything. Obviously, Thorin, you reached out to me a couple of days ago about the opportunity. And even though I didn't have much info at that time, I was super excited to have any conversation about LCK. And it's just very exciting for me to be able to tell and provide insight about what's going on in the LCK in any medium possible. That could be the interviews that I put out on YouTube or the photos or other snippets that I put on Twitter, or it could even be podcasts like that, because you mentioned that I'm the founder of Korizon. And when I was like deviating Korizon, one of the things I did tell to multiple people was I want Korizon to be the bridge between the Korea esports scene and the Western audience. And there's something that I want to do. And if by being on the podcast, I can continue serving that cause, yeah, I'd love to, and I'll be happy to, and I'll appreciate it.
Awesome. That's actually one of the reasons also why I wanted to have people from LCK. It's the reason why, like, a couple of years ago, I did a series, short-lived, admittedly, with Emily Rand, is because that's one thing I've always thought sucked. Like, Max here, Atlus, and LS do a show now. Like, they actually have a podcast, but there was so rarely ever proper regular content that treats the LCK like it is one of the best leagues in the world. Like, people would do like we did in the past on something like you do like a one-off episode, and even then it's basically almost like a soap opera omnibus. It's like, right, let's catch up with literally half the entire split in this one episode and go, and then you just at the end of it, like, people are expected, like, that's all they get for 6 months. Because I've always thought that is a sad thing, is like, there's clearly always been an underground, quite large niche audience for the LCK. But sadly, I guess it's maybe because the Monty Dore era, like, people didn't really do as many shows back then, but there hasn't been enough shows about LCK. What do you think about this, Atlus? Because obviously you started one recently with LS.
Yeah, we've been fighting to get a podcast or anything. I know Papa Smithy was a massive advocate, mostly throughout 2017, 2018, fighting to try and get a podcast. The irony is when he left, that's when we got a podcast, which is a little bit unfortunate. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it wasn't very heavily produced on the English side, and it was very hard for us, based on language barrier, to actually make anything happen with the staff, and especially OGN, because it was basically impossible. Our producer didn't speak English, and we'd work through our actual, LCK translator. Like, Joel would help us out, and we had a few other people there that spoke some English, but otherwise it was really, really difficult. So making shows like that work to the level that we wanted them to was really, really tough. And so now with Yewon, our global producer, it's actually possible to get shows like this actually working. And we were really lucky. We've got James and Ian helping make the Pog State for us, and they've worked on Netflix. They've directed music videos, all this sort of stuff. They're actually super talented. I don't know how Yewon brainwashed them into making a show for us, but it seemed to work. So we're very fortunate. Actually, I don't know when you're going to release this, but the next episode might actually be out. LS and I just recorded one for the start of the summer split.
Okay. Fair enough. No pressure. Listen, I'm not going to take that into account whether I release it now or after or whatever. We'll just see. We'll see which is first. If his isn't out, then just probably unsubscribe from the channel and just he's a liar. So, just only watch this show. Yeah, exactly. No, obviously.
Get onto Twitter, unfollow the heck out of me, block me.
Exactly.
I think that's really important. Yeah.
And here's the thing. I'll give you the advert for this show, because you're probably going to think, how's he going to sell this show? It's pretty simple. I like to be just honest. So what I'd say is the show is basically like Vegemite. If you hate LS, definitely don't watch the show. It's not for you. If you love LS, more of LS, enjoy that. Because listen, anything LS does just becomes an LS product. You have to understand that. Like, it's just who he is as a person, isn't it? He's just got such a massive personality.
It's making me believe that, like, the whole Star Wars idea of good versus evil actually exists, because there's LS fans and there's not. And there just seems to be no in between, to be perfectly honest. You love him or you hate him. But I personally really enjoy Vegemite if spread with the correct ratios. So I'm down. Don't you worry.
Listen, that's how culturally sensitive I am nowadays, Atlas, because you have to understand, I know it's just called Vegemite in, like, fucking Australia. In UK, it's called Marmite, by the way, because we've done that thing.
I know, Marmite tastes different, though. Marmite
is it really different?
Tasty. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Marmite actually, I think they did something to it, whereas Vegemite actually is just, like, the resin scraped from the bottom of a beer barrel. And, like, it's just salt. Like, it tastes like, it's, like, pretty awful, to be honest. But if you eat it right, it works.
Do you like Vegemite, Ashley? You used to live in, like, New Zealand, right? So you must have had it there.
Yeah, as many things in life, I'm actually quite neutral about it. Like,
wait a minute. No. You are not the only person in the world who's neutral about Vegemite. You know, it's the most famous. It's the most famous thing ever that you either love it or hate it. You're really just like, it's okay. I don't mind it.
I'm also being really honest here.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, there are some things I love. There are some things I absolutely hate. Not few of them, but if I hate them, I hate them completely. But Vegemite is like, okay, so if it's in my school lunchbox, it's like a spread on like a toasted like bread or something, I'll eat it. If it's not there, I'm not gonna willingly buy it. But yeah, I can eat it.
Well, there we go. We started on a bombshell already. The only person I've ever met in the entire world who actually was just like, you know what, I'm neither in or out on Vegemite. It just exists.
Maybe that's a New Zealand thing. Do people in New Zealand just like take it or leave it when it comes to Vegemite? I'd never realized. I always thought that it was like either you love it or you absolutely hate it.
Yeah, there seems to be a decent meme, and there are some people around me that I grew up because I did have go through primary school in New Zealand, and there were people around me who's like absolutely hate Vegemite. I don't know, that is like the spread from the hell or something.
Sure, of course.
They just didn't enjoy it, but I was neutral. Some people loved it, like they always had it as like their favorite spread. But yeah, I was always neutral. Like it was definitely part of our diet as we grew up. Vegemite is very, very like available and common in New Zealand too. Like just like Australia, where Max came from.
By the way,
I'm
just
really
to
glad
touch
that we're
on
breaking down the Vegemite.
I know, exactly. Listen, we're just showing the analytical skills here before we really get into it. You know, we're even sort of like addressing fan concerns about Vegemite just ahead, you know, preempting what they might say. No, one thing I would just say about
a culinary show. I'm pretty sure, right? That's what we're here for.
One thing I would just say about that topic earlier when you were saying about how Papa Smithy was trying to get a show going for a long time, I'll actually give people one reason, because the problem is that initially will sound like, because you have to realise, people in the industry know this. Papa Smithy's one of those guys who talks a lot about doing content, wants to do content, and then magically he's never available to do the content. Like, listen, if he's watching, you know how it is, mate. I'll just tell it how it is. I'm not a liar, so I'll just say, a lot of people know the truth that I just revealed. But
he's better at it than me, to be honest.
Fair enough.
Even if he is still pretty shit.
But the problem is this, right?
Awful.
In this case, I can totally sympathize with him, because I tell you the biggest problem as well with doing an LCK podcast, because of the time zones, it just becomes impossible to have guests on the podcast, because obviously the talent that you want to work with have to go during like office hours in Korea usually. And so as a result, it's like, who are you possibly going to get who's going to be able, they either basically have to be at work early morning EU or like absurdly late NA as far as I can tell. So that doesn't work for basically most people that you'd ask to be on a show. So even though everyone in the West who's in the scene in LCS and LEC, they'll say they watch LCK. Like, even if we're getting beyond the ones who just say that as like a hipster thing to be cool, they're just never going to be available to be on shows, I'm afraid. Like, most of them are just going to be like, yeah, I'd love to come on. 4 a.m, no thanks. Like, it's just going to be the case, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, it is really hard. We've had a few guests on the Pog State, and we've had to actually film the show at like midnight or something like that, depending on who it is, or waking up early in the morning and then having a show to do at like 5 p.m. that night. That's been super rough as well, because of, you know, having to try and, you know, work in with guests, because you don't want to like tell a guest like, hey, yeah, come on the show, turn up at 5 a.m. That'd be great. If you could just be ready to do our show as a favor to us at 5 a.m. That would be brilliant. Feels real bad doing that. So yeah, no, that has certainly been rough. It's really good now because we've got at least one other person to talk to, because Yamato Cannon's come to Korea.
That's true.
So we've got him.
And he
as
never
an
shuts the
option.
fuck up, so that's good. You know.
Exactly, it's perfect. Plus, you're happy to listen to his voice no matter what he says.
He has got an amazing voice, hasn't he? Why he doesn't do? Why they don't hire him just to do the voiceovers? I have no idea, because his voice is like the golden voice, one of those ones.
He's completely wasted as a coach. Completely wasted as a coach.
Yeah.
It's a real shame.
In fact, here's the little tip for the people. If anyone who produces LCK in any way watches this show ever, just happenly, I'm just going to give you a straight fire piece of advice, right? When you do those like intros and stuff, which obviously are great. In fact, the one for this one's exceptional. If you ever want to do like a really amazing one just to appeal to a Western audience, get Yamato Cannon to be like the movie trailer voice guy and be like introducing, like, and then just say all the names of the people. That would be so sick. I'm not even joking. That would be like Goosebumps level shit. I guarantee you.
Oh, it'd be so good.
Oh my god!
And with his accent as well. Oh my god!
He's also got like he's got that thing that actually some Scandinavians have, where they're really good fluent in English, but obviously they're not from England. Where when they speak English, they almost speak more correctly than actually like I do, for example. Like their accent sounds amazing, doesn't it? So neutral.
I had to relearn English, becoming a commentator in Australia.
Right.
Like, holy shit, man.
Oh, I guess because of all the slack and stuff, sure, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like every sentence is like one word. It's like enunciation. What's that? Oh, crap.
Exactly.
I have to learn how to do this now, I guess. What?
Oh, mate, I had to learn the word water actually has a T in it. I even just said it there with that one, but listen.
I know.
Yeah. If when I say water like that, that's how you say water where I'm from. Water.
Well, we add a D in the middle and then take away the end. We call it water. You know?
That's true.
Aussies.
My
It does sound like the name of...
no idea what I'm talking about.
That sounds like the support role there, mate. Water. You know?
Yeah.
Just sounds like
Water.
the old school support role.
Water.
Right, let's do this. I know where we should start for LCK. Right, just to get out of the way, because I don't want it to dominate every podcast. Right, the problem with LCK at the moment is because there hasn't been an international champion from the LCK for a long time. Everyone, it's like the LCK is like trapped in this like grease around the camera where people can't look past the fact that it's not considered the best region. It doesn't have the world champion. And so they feel as though it's lost its identity in that sense. Like I notice even the people who on Reddit say that LPL is the best region. They're not watching LPL. Like they haven't then given the same like love to LPL they used to give to LCK. So where are you guys sitting on this at the moment? Obviously it's something like I say, we've talked to death about in talk shows, but I want to start off the show in this regard. So, Ashley, where do you think LCK is at in terms of like the idea that like Korea's not as good at the moment, or it's fallen down, or it hasn't gotten back up yet? Like, where is it at in that sense for you?
Can I actually go off a little bit tangent? And even though I think it's related to what you just raised, I want to talk about the LCK Summer Split opening that you just talked about.
Oh, yeah, let's do it. Sure.
Yeah. Because for people who have been watching the LCK, the Summer Split has an opening. It's like they took the face scan of one player from each of the 10 teams in the LCK and show them going through the runes and display them as champion. For example, Faker was displayed as Azir, like Damwon Gaming Luguri was Jace, and DRX carrier was Thresh. And what I loved about that video, which was super really well produced, all CG. It was based on a ruined kingdom. I actually wrote a big Twitter thread.
What is that though? I don't know what that reference is. Is that something from League of Legends?
Basically like a dynasty.
Oh, I see what you mean. I thought you were referencing something from like World of Warcraft, something famous.
No.
Right, okay, just the
it's
thing.
Karazhan.
I get you.
That is straight out of World of Warcraft.
Oh, right, fair enough.
Same thing. No, I'm kidding.
It's all right.
Yeah, because like Faker's walking through like the broken, very worn out cobblestones, and on the background of the players there is like broken arches, like fallen down towers, and like sand blowing over all the rune statues. And I just think that I know that OG and openings are very, very well known for capturing the narratives that they go across the LCK, but I think this opening captured the most strongest narrative in the LCK, but in a different way through an atmosphere. And I think you're correct that the general vibe in the LCK is moment, hey, we are the fallen kingdoms. We were the kings of kings once upon a time when we were like sending back-to-back world finalists on all the world championship finals. And that is not the case. And if you listen to the fans, if you read through the Korean communities, if you listen to the Korean casters as well as the English caster, the general vibe is, hey, like we were once the glory, and now we have to rebuild and climb back to the top, which is kind of different approach from, let's say, LEC and LCS, who have also not won a world championship. Like it's for them, it's more about the chase. But for LCK, I think they focus quite heavily on, hey, like we were once the champions, and then now we have to climb back to the top. And how do we do that? I think that's a very strong overarching theme across the LCK.
Yeah, I want to jump on this just a little bit, because what I really love about this theme is the fact that I think it feels like the first time the LCK has been self-aware about this. Because I find
they were kind of in denial before.
We have so many of these conversations about why isn't Korea the best anymore, when it was 2 years ago. Like 3 years ago. It was a long time ago, World Championship. Yes. Like this has been happening for a really long time, guys. Yeah. It's not like it just snuck up on us and now we're all of a sudden not the best. Like 2018 happened. Like, yes, 50% of that team on IG was Korean. That doesn't make it a Korean win. It's still IG that won that final, you know? And 2019, the same thing. Like our best team got knocked out in the quarterfinals. 2018, like things haven't really gotten better since then. And you can make all of these excuses like, you know, T1 shouldn't have done this, or that like they should have been able to win because they're actually a better team. They just lost on the day. Like that's bullshit. We lost. We're not the best. LPL's been the best for a really long time. I think that like you can have apologists and things like that, but I think owning up to your identity is like really important. And that's why I'm so happy about this intro, like truly embracing the fact that we do have a ruined kingdom that everyone's now fighting for. And once you get on that throne, there's like a fuck ton of rebuilding to do in order to actually like make it look good again. And I think it's really cool that like we've actually embraced it. So I'm glad you brought that up, Ashley. I think it's something that's really, really important to acknowledge, is the fact that finally Korea itself has realized, oh shit, no, we're not the best. We've got to really start sweeping the floor a little bit over here.
By the way,
The
I
gameplay
actually
hasn't yet done that.
No.
So we'll have to see what happens.
We'll get to that. Listen, we'll get to the part where we all get disappointed at all the top teams, which has been the routine for the last few years. But we'll get to that. Listen, I will just say, I appreciate now that intro so much more, because I can't lie, actually, I didn't know any of that, so I wasn't looking at any of the stuff in the background or putting it together. Like, you're basically like, there was another person in esports who once contacted me to ask me about like an episode of Black Mirror and what I thought was like, I don't know if you know that show, it's like a sci-fi TV show in the West. But basically, they were like, oh, what do you think of that show? And I was like, yeah, it was a pretty good episode. The twist was a bit weird, but like, I liked that character. And they were like, what the hell? I thought you were like, because they thought like, because I'm like a writer and stuff, that I'd be all like going into it. And then when I was like, what did you think? Like, and I'm not joking, Atlus. They started doing stuff like going, I love the way like when the lighting would be red, that was to symbolize the character's rage. And until I was like, holy shit, like I'm not even on this level. I didn't even listen. If any of that's going on, I'm not getting any. I just watched the show.
Did they send you the essay afterwards or something like that?
Okay. Can I just be a complete literature nerd and bring out a specific scene in that opening? I'm really sorry.
It's all right.
I feel very passionate about this. Do you guys know this poem called Ozymandias by Percy Shelley?
Yes.
And there is a specific scene in that opening where, Aiming's in Israel. He's looking out to the vast desert, and there is a fallen statue. Yes. And there is only a head lying on that like endless desert. And oh my God, I was like, this is Ozymandias. Because if you read the poem, it's about a big statue in the middle of a desert.
Sure.
I'm actually reading it right now. Like, and on that pedestal, those words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings, what LCK once used to be. Look on my works, ye mighty and despair. Nothing beside remains, round the decay of the colossal wreck, which might be the LCK now. Boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away.
Also works for Azir.
Yeah.
No, here's the thing about that. I just want to check this. Right, Atlus, listen, we both said we knew what she was talking about there. Am I right in thinking you also only know that reference? Because you might not know this, Ashley. I only know, listen, I know who Shelley is, but I don't read poetry. I'm going to tell you straight up. The only reason I know that is because I cheated. The most famous comic book of all time, Watchmen, has a character where he literally talks about that poem. So I'm sort of faking when I say I know it. Like, I just know it referenced in a comic from the 80s. Yeah.
And I'm not going to lie, I haven't read that comic for like 50 years.
Is that a long time ago?
Well.
Sure.
So, I might be a boomer. I'm not that much of a boomer. But yeah, it's been a while. But yeah, no, the reference now it's brilliant, absolutely fantastic.
Right, so we've done Vegemite, Ozymandias. Right, we'll probably talk about some Korean League of Legends eventually.
Obviously, we're talking about LCK because we're trying to avoid the topic as much as possible because it makes us sad, I think.
Right, here's the thing though. I'll tell you the way we'll start with the positive, right? As opposed to talking about teams that have negatives, blah, blah, blah. I saw you say this on Twitter, so it is the team I wanted to talk about first of all, a lot.
Oh, I know.
Damwon Gaming. Let's talk about it, because if anyone's followed LCK for the last year and a half, the story of Damwon is basically this, right? They came up in the wake of Griffin, but they were the team where it was just from the scrim hype at the Worlds before they came into LCK. Like, the Western teams played them and they're all like, this team, who is this unknown team that's wrecking us all? Whereas obviously Griffin was already known at that time. Then they came in the league, and basically, like, there was a time where they didn't get to be the second best team. It was actually Sandbox who was up with Griffin, who were at the top of the league, and they were the two like rookie teams that were blowing everyone away. And the problem with Damwon basically has been, if you're a Damwon fan, it's almost like KT light. It's like they always give you enough hope that they're going to be so sick when they look really good. And they have this so defined style and even play around certain star players so well. But then famously in the playoffs, they never deliver in the way you want them to. They never challenge for the title truly. And every time, like I say, that's why I say it's like KT light. It's like you can always talk yourself into believing like they're knocking on the door being the best. This is the time. But this is the problem, Atlus. Just like KT. I'm starting to believe it. Like I'm strapping myself in for the disappointment. So come on, what do you think of Damwon at the moment? Can they be the best team in LCK?
So I tweeted out about this. I was like, "Is Damwon the best team in the LCK?" And I actually had the CEO of T1, Joe Marsh, tweet me saying like, "Oh, come on, mate, it's a little bit too early." I'm like, "Dude, like okay. I am obviously being sarcastic."
Yeah.
Like, and also like part of what that tweet meant was like, "Holy shit! Like, how are we in this position right now?"
To even ask the question is pretty crazy.
Actually performing the best. Like, is this actually doomsday? Like, but. That last game that they played, and yes, I mean, they're not necessarily playing against the cream of the crop. It was SP that they were up against, but still, they played so damn well. And at that point in time, Showmaker had, he was second and third in Korean solo queue, 2 accounts, literally top 3. Right now he's ranked 1.
1 and 3. 1 and 3.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. So, did he change his name?
Yes.
Yeah, so he's now RK2 China or something like that. So he's now ranked 1 and 3. He was ranked 2 and 3 on the time of that game. Like, this guy is like, I don't know what it is, but he just breathes confidence into his team. And I loved this. Wadid was talking about it to me actually on the broadcast, right? Like, you queue up, right? And you get into a game, you see that Showmaker's on your team. Everyone on your team is just like exploding with confidence. Because they know that this guy's just going to hard carry no matter what. And so they can basically do what they want. Like, this guy has a 70% Katarina win rate, rank 1 in Korea. Like, I don't understand how you can possibly do that. Like, that champion is ridiculously hard to win consistently on.
At least above, like, gold or whatever. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, no, exactly, right? Like, and he was a notable Katarina one-trick when he came into the LCK. Unfortunately, hasn't played it enough, in my personal opinion.
Also, that thing he did, mate, where he was the player, right, that did that challenge where he tried to play every champion in the game once and get into Challenger, I think it was the challenge, right? Or was it number 1?
Did that,
wasn't it Showmaker who did that, actually? Yeah. And he did it, by the way. He succeeded. He actually did play every champion in the game and get to, like, the top of solo. That's impossible.
So he didn't play every single champion. He played 82 champions.
Oh, was the rule he just had to play one different one each time?
Because when he played 82 champions, he got the challenger.
Ah, right. Oh, in that case, listen, you know what, Showmaker, that is still really...
And then he was in
That's still really impressive, but the problem is, what I just said... Nah, what I said would have been more insane. Because like I was saying, I want to see how he's going to pull out, like, some of the ones that just don't even get played in the game at all when he is at challenge level. It is still insane. Yeah. That shows how mad skills this guy must have.
Because I actually
just
had an
like
interview
natural
with
skills, right? It's not even necessarily like I can.
There's no way he made these champs exactly.
Or my knowledge of a champion. It's just he's fundamentally that good at the game, and that's what's really impressive.
Because I did bring it up with him in a recent conversation I had, and it sounded like he plays some ridiculous champions. Like, I asked him, "Hey, when you were going through the challenge or playing one champion each in order to get to the challenger, what were some picks that you found especially difficult to work with?" And he said, Ilaoi. So he did try Ilaoi.
Okay.
He tried Chemo. And he tried even Bolivia mid. And he's like, yeah, those champions aren't meant for mid. And I was like, so how about Garen? Was Garen also good? He's like, yeah, Garen was pretty good. I won on that game.
I mean, Fake has been
wait a minute.
Garen for ages.
Wait a minute, was that also... I didn't actually know that was a condition. Was it that he had to also play the champion mid? Because I thought it was because, if you're getting a screen solo queue, like, you don't just get your role every time. Obviously, I thought the logic would be if you played team or you'd play it like top lane or something, and that's the way you'd sort of cheat on the challenge. Did he really play them all mid as well?
I didn't ask specifically, but I'm assuming that he tried to play him in the mid as much as possible. And given
that's even more impressive in some ways, yeah.
Yeah, given that it is
Showmaker,
as Max
lane,
mentioned...
Right? It was queuing mid-top.
Right. That would make sense then. Okay.
Yeah.
Although I like the way I'm doing that. Like, I'm trying to now, like, find a way to downplay the fact that he did this insane challenge. Like, well, you know what, Atlas, he probably just played other roles with them and beat all the challenger players in Korea using champions that don't even exist in the game for the rest of us until they get reworked.
Yeah. No,
there's always haters.
But I think that Damwon are a really exciting team. One thing that we were worried about, right, was that Zephyr had moved to head coach.
Everyone hates him as a drafter. If people don't know, yes.
Everyone's been really upset with Zephyr for a really long time.
Yes,
but they actually drafted really well in their last match. Things were absolutely fine. I think that a lot of the drafting in the LCK has been super weird. You could talk to LS about this for about 15 years, to be perfectly honest, but We had like the whole Ezreal Aphelios issue where everyone's like first picking Ezreal and then every team gets smashed by an Aphelios comp or something like that. Things just go wrong. But on the Damwon side, it actually just didn't matter. And they were able to play around their drafts much better. So I don't know. When Coach Kim left the team and he'd turned Damwon from this, Challengers career squad to a world championship deserving team. When they lost him, I thought that it was all going to be over, right? But it looks like the players were just that good anyway, and it didn't actually matter about the coaching. It wasn't about that. It was about just this team being good and not necessarily having the limelight yet. So it's very early days, and they are right now at the top of the ladder in the LCK, but things are definitely going to move around. But it's certainly a good sign so far. And they did have a great run at Worlds in 2019 as a very, very new team.
Yes.
So I think that 2020 is pretty bright for Damwon.
If people don't know, a piece of trivia, this is just something that only is on talk shows. So if someone never watched any of the European shows, they might not know this. One of the crazy things about the fact that G2 came second at Worlds is everyone, because if you just look at the results, we know they were supposed to win Worlds. They were supposed to win everything that year. But what people don't know is they themselves didn't think they were even going to get past the quarterfinals because they were having to play Damwon. And in scrims, they said they lost something like 15 out of 17 scrims to them or something. Like they were getting wrecked. So I would essentially put that down to, listen, G2 look like one of the most clutch teams ever. Like they can clearly play to the max level no matter what state they're in. Whereas in contrast, as I've alluded to, that's pretty much been Damwon's sort of failing, is that when they're in the big moment, the inexperience seems to kick in or something goes wrong. What are your thoughts on Damwon generally, Ashley?
I will agree with Max that those are insanely talented players. We talked about Showmaker a lot, but I don't even have to go into Nuguri and how unique.
Let's do that.
Talented.
Yeah.
I think this is Thorin's favorite topic, by the way.
I do. I love this one.
We can carve out our 20 minutes of Nuguri now, I think.
You have to realise, Ashley, because my favourite player originally in League of Legends was Flame, I just became like a connoisseur of top laners. And I love top laners that know how to carry. And that's actually something, let me just set this up. I'll just take a minute to do this. One area I feel like we've also failed Western fans is when you've watched a player loads, like a Showmaker, like a Nuguri, and you know how sick they are, right? Anyone can watch highlights and just get on the bandwagon and go, yeah, oh, that guy's really sick. And like, oh, I've heard he's the best player. Like, you've seen it right now, by the way, with Knight from the LPL. Because people who didn't watch the LPL, because that was always the hipster pick when he hadn't made it to international competition, was to say Knight's like secretly the best player in the world, but he's not at Worlds, because it makes you seem like cool. Everyone just jumps on the field like, yeah, oh yeah, he's amazing. It's like, if you've only watched him at like MSC, you should probably do a bit of research it a bit. Like, don't just already give him that status. So I would say about Nuguri, this is where we failed them. When he went to Worlds, finally, because everyone was talking about the fact that he's from the lineage of the great Korean top laners, he's so sick, etc. When people hear that he's sick, a really good player and the star player, they expected him to be the Shy. And so because at that tournament, the Shy did do what the Shy does, where he just dominates you completely. It doesn't matter if he has the jungle help, he just bullies the lane, he smashes you on every matchup, he gets all the kills. And at the end of the game, you can't deny it. You're just that's the best top laner I've ever seen. So when they saw Nuguri, everyone was mad underwhelmed because they were just what is this? Why is he doing this kleptomancy build? And what is he doing? Why is he not going all in? And that's the area where we failed them. Because the sick thing about Nuguri is this. He is the star of the team and they will play through him. But just because he's a Jace main, he is not that Hooney Marin, the Shy guy, a Khan that's just going through you or you're going to feed. He's actually a guy who, I even think he's a little bit more like a Smeb or something. There's so much nuance to his game. And the reason I also allude to him as being a bit like Smeb is he's one of the few top laners. Remember, top lane as a role was considered the island. You just play on your own. He's the opposite. All the stuff he's doing in the game is about his team. His timing on when to rotate somewhere or when to not just be greedy and take the wave. I think the guy's a genius in some ways. It's very rare you see young players who have that talent level. That's a veteran thing that you pick up later. So what is it you like about Nuguri here, Ashley? What were you alluding to that's so great about him?
I would disagree with the statement slightly that he is less like Smeb, who has been known to play more around his, the map. And we know Smeb as that cannon player from the 2016 World Championship. He's about the team fight. Nuguri, when I see him, he seems to be a bit more about the lane. And what I like about Nuguri, he is uncompromising about his own style. Like, he's not trying to be anyone else. He's trying to be Nuguri himself. And there are two specific. Max wants to jump in, but I'll just try to finish this.
All right, just keep going. Just keep going.
Yeah. I think there are two characteristics today. Number one, if Nuguri wants to play something, he plays it. I don't know whether he always likes it, and the team does try to play around and draft around Nuguri a lot. Like, if he wants to play Kleptomancy, and if he thinks Kleptomancy is good and fun, because having fun on the stage is very important to Nuguri, he plays Kleptomancy into whatever the fuck champion he wants to. And that's the first thing about Nuguri. And the second thing is, this guy doesn't tilt. It's quite funny, because you know how that Hulk meme where someone says, "Oh, that is my secret. I'm always angry."
Sure.
In a way, Nuguri always seems to be always seems to be tilted, because even if you're a veteran top laner, if you die once or twice, you shift your playstyle slightly. Okay, I got solo killed twice, so maybe I'll just play safe and try to hug the tower and just try to last hit minions as they get hit by the tower. Nuguri doesn't do that. If he's on 0-4-1, he will still try to solo kill the other player whenever he has the chance. And he keeps trying. Doesn't matter whether he's carrying, doesn't matter whether he's losing, he does that. He almost reminds me in a purely characteristic way, Invictus Gaming Ning. His KDA doesn't impact his playstyle. And in that way, there is a negative side to it. He can be a bit predictable for the other team to counter him, because you know exactly how Nuguri is going to play almost in every game. But the positive side is, even when he's a bit down on KDA, you know that he's going to go for that extra play that might turn the game around or shift the momentum. So I think that's very, very respectful for Nuguri. And given those two characteristics, and also founded by that he's such a talented player. If you look at his lane phase and the way he CSs, where he controls lane, he is so perfect. So I think he's a very, very unique player that we haven't actually seen in the LCK for a while. Even though LCK has produced some great top laners, I think Nuguri is Nuguri, not the latest descendant on that lineage of LCK top laners.
Yeah, and I can sort of add on to what you're saying, Ashley, because I think that I agree and disagree with what you're saying. You're saying that he plays to win lane. I think Nuguri, he has a very defined idea of how he's going to win every time he goes into a game. And so how Nuguri plays is entirely based on what composition the team has and what champion he's playing. So if he's playing a split pusher, yes, indeed, he's playing to win lane, so he can always smash this guy so that he can keep pushing down turrets, right? And always win that 1v1. But the reason this dude starts cull on half the champions that he plays is because he identifies that, oh wait, this time I'm playing a teamfight champion. There's a reason why his Vladimir was so incredibly terrifying whenever he'd play it last year. I'm actually really sad Vlad's sort of out of the meta, because we miss out on so many of our amazing Vladimir players. But he would craft his game around that. And the untiltability factor plays into this, right? He doesn't play to win a lane or make highlight plays or anything like that. He plays every single game to win. He wants to win the game. It's not about how you get there. It's about the result, right? Sure. And so it's not pretty. We talk about the Nuguri 0-2 power spike. That's not a meme. That's a fact. That's a thing that happens almost every single game. This dude dies all the time, but he has such good knowledge of when he's going to be strong and what he needs to play for. It's about the objectives that he's set up for himself for the game that I think is really impressive with Nuguri. Sometimes it doesn't work, he's not perfect, but you can see in his play style that he uses his emotional fortitude, which is something that I think a lot of Korean players really need to work on. Sure. He uses that emotional fortitude to be able to get past losing, dying a couple of times in lane. It doesn't affect him, and therefore he can still focus on what the actual goal is of the game, which is to kill the enemy's nexus, right? And Nuguri is uniquely capable of keeping that mindset, which I think is really, really impressive, especially here in Korea, where there is a lot of emotional stress that a lot of players go through.
Yeah, because actually one thing about
himself.
Like, one thing that I also feel is sad is because people who only watch Worlds and the MSIs, etc., have only seen him at the last Worlds, and obviously it didn't go as far as people thought. And like I say, like if someone like the Shy is just popping off completely, he's not that type of player in the same sense. So you're just not going to you're not going to every game, no matter what, just hard carry the game, because as actually Max says here, if you're trying to win the game no matter what, you have to look bad sometimes as a top laner. That's like a rule of top lane, I'm afraid. Like, it ain't like mid lane where you can just chill out, farm up, let them lose the game and go, well, I looked like the best in the loss. Like, that is a cardinal sin if you're a top laner. And another problem I think happened is this: last year, cause T1 was the super team, every player at every position, in theory, was among the best in their region, especially obviously when Mata was there initially because he's such a superstar name. I feel like Khan like overshadowed him because people kept thinking, because Khan's always had so much hype around him, that he was the best Korean top laner. Whereas like Khan in the right setup can be very good, but I always thought Naguri's like a way better all-around player for me. Like, as a top laner, that's the guy I would want on my team, you know?
Well, also Khan was the opposite of Noguri, right? Like, Khan was a tilter.
Sure.
And you could see Khan deteriorate over a series. And that was why, you know, it was really hard to bet on Kingzone when he was on that team. It was why it was very hard for T1 to play through top lane when Khan was on that team. It was the opposite of what Noguri adds. And it's so funny because I think a lot of people look at Noguri and they're like, oh, he's feeding, he must be tilted. It's not. It's not it's not how that works at all. It's like he's feeding because he thought he was able to go for this play and there was a jungler there, and he's going to go for that play again, assuming that the jungler isn't going to be there again, because he knows, based on the, you know, where the game is at that point in time, that champion is in lethal range and I'm going to kill them. And he just goes for it, right? And it's not a matter of like, oh, I need to do this because I need to get that highlight play, I'm tilted, I need to get my honor back or whatever. It's no. I want 300 gold so that I can get back into this game. Like,
also, you know what? I've got like a mini rant here, because one of the things I've always tried to do also from doing so many shows over the years is like listen to the experiences of people who play all the roles and then translate to people who only play the other roles where their like misconceptions are or where like the disconnect is. Here's the disconnect for top laners, but everyone else viewing top lane is everyone makes out like every time you get ganked by the other jungler, you just misplayed the lane, you didn't want it. It's the longest lane in the game. Like, first of all, mid laners, you don't even get to talk here. You play in a tiny lane where you literally demand that now two people from the other side of the map come and like ward the other sides of it. Like, the top laner would love to have that. We get one ward, or we have to put the ward ourselves. Then, on top of that, as he was like in line with what you're saying now, Atlus, another thing about top lane is, because of the way it works, like, you can't just be like, oh, well, I'm on this enormous lane, so I'll just sit under my tower, because depending on where the lane state is, you'll never get any farm that way. So you can't just choose to not have any farm in the game. Sometimes you have to like gamble that like the guy won't be able to kill me or the jungler won't be here, because otherwise this wave's just done. Like, I'll never have the farm. Like, I have to basically gamble that I get away with this window for the next 5 minutes, because if I do, I'm back in the game. Like, I'm going to be a relevant factor later. If also, like, there's a million other factors. Like, sometimes you just don't get any jungle help. You can't have any of this game because everyone's just partying the bot lane 24/7. So like, there's a million factors. I have a lot of sympathy for the top laners where it's too easy as a fan to just, you can see that jungler sat in that brush and he's going to jump out and you're like, why is he going up? It's like, because if he didn't go up, it's like, I'll give you a concept from Counter-Strike, one of my main games, right? Mm-hmm. When you play Counter-Strike and you're the terrorist team, the attacking team, the one that's going into the bomb site, right? When you go into the bomb site, there's a million places that someone could be hiding. They could be behind a box on your left. They could be boosted up somewhere weird. They could be hiding like point blank when you come on the corner. Now, if you're a fan, if you ever run in like that as a pro and someone shoots you in the back because you didn't check that spot, the fan thinks, what an idiot, like even I checked that spot. And it's like, no, on the pro level, if they checked every spot, you wouldn't be able to take the site as fast. So you have to just gamble when you take the site that you've made a rough read of like what the defense is probably like, and then you, like, for example, one person has to look in one spot and then the other person covers his back. Like, you can't just check everything. Like, you can, there's no way to play a league like that. Every game has a level of risk, in my opinion, like that. You have to, but the point we're making here is Nagori, when he's on his game especially, is very good at calculating that risk. Like, he even knows, like you're saying, almost when to like tactically feed, which sounds like a meme, but that can be a real thing. You can do that. You can do that.
Yeah, and actually, I'm really glad that you brought up the CS:GO comparison as well, because when you don't check that spot and someone does kill you from there, you relay that information to your team, and then your team can use that, right? And Noguri does this, and this is why I thought that their victory on the weekend in their second match was so impressive. It was because Noguri would get killed top lane, right? But then the rest of the team is taking something bottom lane. So it's like he's going for a play, and if the jungle is there, oh no, he's going to die. But the rest of Damwon are down bottom lane taking a dragon. The rest of Damwon are able to actually now play around Ghost, and Beryl especially. Oh my god, Beryl was just unbelievable in this opening week. The Pantheon support was just nuts. But they're actually able to play around their bottom lane now to the point where if the jungle is top lane ever, Showmaker's obviously just going to dominate his lane, right? He's going to deny 7 CS from the opponent easily in that window of time where the jungler has to be topside, because he can just do that, turns on that pressure. But now bottom side of the map, especially with Canyon being able to actually play a little bit more up-tempo, one could say. He was a little bit of a passenger through a lot of their games in 2019, which was a little bit disappointing. But now they seem to be able to actually coordinate around what Noguri's doing, which I think has been the most impressive thing to me, is their exchange of information and being able to actually utilize it. Because this is like, it goes into another like conversation about the LPL being so good and all this sort of stuff, and what is the LCK doing? There's all this aggression, but where's the macro gone? And LPL teams have been so good at utilizing aggression and taking these surprising moments and then pivoting really quickly into what the right decision is. And I think Damwon are showing that they are at least picking up that aspect of what makes the LPL good, because it's adaptation that is really, really important in today's meta, because there just isn't the vision that there used to be.
I'll also throw in there on that topic, because obviously, like, one of the most maligned players in Damwon is Canyon, the jungler, because when he's at his peak, he can look very, very good. But he's also one of the players where, listen, like, people understand Noguri and Showmaker are very good, and they don't tend to get that much blame if the team doesn't do that well. It used to basically be the bot lane and Canyon who got all the flame. And people might not know the story behind that, because if you don't know how far he's come, you won't realize how actually this team's developed. So the story with Damwon is, when they brought in my beloved Flame in the past, the whole premise of why they brought him in was because there was a shot calling disconnect in the team. If they played Canyon and Noguri at the time, who in theory were the best for both of the roles, all the interviews said like it just didn't work. Like neither of them was that good at shot calling. So what they would do is they would play Flame initially when he came with Canyon, and the logic was Flame's a veteran, so he shot calls the game. And then when Noguri would play, he would play with Crush, who was the old jungler as well. And it's only basically after they sort of like trained up Canyon in that sense that they put the two together. Do you remember this story, Ashley? I'm sure it was mentioned in an interview that you did or something.
Yeah, because I did specifically ask Flame about him being an active shot caller, and he did agree on the premise. And there was that chunk of time where Nuguri was getting paired up with Punch more often.
Oh, Punch, sorry.
While,
yes. Yeah, it was Punch. Yeah.
Punch more often,
right.
While Flame was getting paired up with Canyon often. And we just have to remember that Canyon debuted at last year, like beginning of last year's, at the 2018 Casper Cup, which happens at the end of the 2018 and goes into 2019. He had just turned 17, so he could play on the stage, and he had almost finished that season as the first played person in the Korean solo queue. So we all knew that he was mechanically gifted. It was about him building the experience. And while we were at the shot calling, I do want to point out one more thing. I think Ghost, the new bot laner of Damwon Gaming, being added to the team benefited the team in more ways than what we see on the surface, because even during the sandbox, he was quoted as the shot calling AD carry, just like how Jackie Love is also being touted as on TES. And I think shot calling is something that has been often been quoted as lacking in Damwon Gaming, and now Ghost is here, who has a very, very defined voice in the game. He knows what he wants to do. He looks at the map quite often. He will often relay his information to the other laners. I think he's benefiting the team a lot more than what you just see in the surface.
Yeah,
Okay.
I completely agree. And I think we need to reiterate just how young Canyon is. Like, this dude turned 19 5 days ago.
No.
Like 5 days ago. He's a baby. He's a little baby.
He's a baby.
And he came in, like, the thing that's really cool about Damwon is that they promoted as Canyon basically joined the team. So it's like they had this
He was a
opportunity
trainee for
to
a while.
utilize this suit. Yeah. And like
Yeah.
he's currently ranked 12, but yeah, he's been rank 1 in on Korean solo queue for a really long time. Jug King is like notorious for just being super good. So Canyon's like the thing that we really liked about Canyon was the fact that he was a smart player. It was really hard that they sort of came in a world where Tarzan existed, because Tarzan was like the quintessential like smart
He was the
jungler.
mastermind, yeah, sure.
Yeah, that just, and in his heyday, unfortunately, we don't even know where he's gone, to be perfectly honest. Like he's sort of fallen off the planet. But in his heyday, Tarzan just knew where everyone was. Like this was the guy where you like watched the pings on the minimap and you were like, oh, how do they have map hacks? It's just Tarzan pinging the minimap exactly where his opponent jungler is. Like it's crazy. And you could, in programs, you could actually just go back and watch the LCK, some of the regular season Griffin matches where Tarzan's just got everyone on lock, just knows. Canyon was really smart and he was able to play reserved. The problem is he got too reserved, because I think he was worried and he was young and he doesn't want to make a fool of himself on stage. And I think he got a little bit complacent and decided that he'd let his incredibly good solo laners hard carry him until, you know, he got to just throw a glacial prison and then they won the game, you know, because they'd have a hemo plague afterwards. So I think now Canyon is understanding his role a little bit better, and the team is just coming together. So I feel like we've now started a podcast of just talking about Damwon and the potential for them to be good.
Don't give away the formula. The secret was, I'm starting with the teams that we can actually celebrate, and before we just start brutally and cynically criticizing people and asking why they have jobs and are they stealing checks. No, here's the thing. Another team we can talk about that you can definitely say some positive things about is, let's talk about DragonX. Because DragonX actually, if it's not Damwon, DragonX is the best team, if not them, in my opinion. Like, you look at the lineup as well, it's everything's coming together now, because the problem with them in the past was obviously people had their questions about Puyallup, definitely, and Thorin. He had some times where he failed a little bit, times in the playoffs maybe a little bit dodgy, but both of those players seem like they're coming along. Like, this team actually looks like it's kind of like gelling together now. And obviously, listen, I know Atlus, this must be one of the ultimate teams for LS to rant about, because obviously they're like the ultimate sinners team, right? They're the ones that just play the shit that they think just works now. They don't care about what's beautiful in the meta, because it's a CV Max team. And if anyone knows the way CV Max drafts, he's in his own universe, and it's an alternate universe, but sometimes there's a cool overlap.
The thing that I love about the LS and DRX combination is the fact that, like, remember, CV Max like used LS's Avengers bot lane, you know, the Talia Pantheon. Like,
sure,
he has like, there's an homage to LS in how CV Max does a lot of his work. But then on the other side of the coin, he also drafts insanely and makes LS super mad.
Of course.
And then there's also like the fact that their style is like really sinner, and LS hates that, but also it has his favorite player in the universe, Chovy, on the team. So like, I think this is causing LS, like, his brain is just melting whenever he like watches DRX play. But they just had like, arguably, like, almost you can just say objectively straight up the hardest possible week that you could get coming straight out of spring, and won both of their matches. And
against the finalists.
They weren't 2-0s. They weren't clean in any way, but they won. And I don't necessarily know what to make of it, because the way DragonX won was like real messy, but they beat the two best teams from spring. So does this make them the best team? I don't know, because I'm looking at Damwon's games and the way that they won and thinking it looks nicer, but also the caliber of competition that they're going up against is, definitely not up to that level. Having, you know, APK Prince just promoted into the LCK, and Solo One Prince, that now that they've name changed, and Sandbox look absolutely atrocious at the moment. There's a reason why we couldn't get Yamato on the Pog State for the most recent.
It's going to be a while.
I think he's got
some things to do. Exactly. Yeah. What do you think, Ashley? What do you think of DRX right now?
I'm just going to go back to the whole narrative of DragonX, which I think is quite beautiful. So at the beginning of the off-season, there was a long period of time when Depth was the only person sitting on that roster for a while, sitting alone, in the team house, literally, because we will see him stream and there was no one else in the team house. And he was sitting there thinking, what's going on? And in later interviews during the spring split, he would quote that period as one of the most depressing periods of his life because DragonX put their roster together at the very last minute. And when we opened the box, Chobi came in and we all knew him as a very, very solid and gifted mid laner from Griffin. And then they threw in some unproven rookies. Doran from the top lane, who has played a few matches at Griffin, but didn't show like a spectacular performance like Nuguri and Keen and Khan and some other best top laner in the LCK have. Pyosik, who was literally streaming a few weeks before he got promoted to the main roster. And when I talk to him, he doesn't know who the fuck G2 is because he didn't keep up to competitive matches before that.
Okay.
It's funny because I met Pyosik in the lobby and he had a really good at least performance. And I told him, hey, that was pretty good. Like, it was kind of like Yankos. And he's like, who's Yankos? And I'm like, do you know G2? And he's like, yeah, Yankos the mid laner. I'm like, oh my God. He was like pretending to know what he was talking about.
Problem is, they're going to absolutely meme him if they play him at Worlds now. You understand that? They're going to be like, oh, do you know who we are now? So there'll be some angle they'll take on that. So you've set him up there.
Or the other way around, if DRX beats G2, Pyoshi can be like, yeah, I still don't know who those
exactly.
are. But I guess it doesn't
matter. Oh, was he in that game? Oh, my bad. I didn't see him.
I keep track of a lot of narratives in LCK, and that's one of the narratives that I'm going to keep track of. But there was Pyosik and there was Carrier, and I know that he's getting hyped up now, but within the Korean communities, people were talking about Carrier long before he debuted. Like, even when he was 15 and 16, he was during with the top talents like Teddy and
He was during with
Roller.
Deft for like a year, like before
and also,
they even played together on a team.
And
it was really cool.
And pretty much every single top 80 carries in Korea. So everyone was hopping up, but we have seen so many cases where, trainees get hyped up with their solo queue performance, and when they turn up on the stage, they kind of fade and don't make the big impact, and they kind of like stay as like the B to A tier, like B to A tier player. And DRX, I would say, already exceeded expectation in the spring split because CBMX thought that, hey, I'll be happy if this team goes to playoffs. And they went to the third place and in a very good performance too. And I've already talked about how impressed I am with Carrier. And in the summer, Pyosik and Doran has stepped up. But what I was impressed to see from DRX in the summer split, at least, is number one, yes, because of CBMX, it could be because of CBMX and it could be also because of the players. DRX has also drafted what they wanted to draft. Like, they have tried Jig's mid lane and bot lane in the past, but now they have the early game aggression to pull those drafts off. Sometimes they will like draft the comp that is really strong pre-15-minute game, but didn't seem to have enough confidence to execute it perfectly and kind of let the snowball like slide and let the other team have the snowball. And I see that DragonX now looks even more decisive. And also another criticism that DragonX has often had is because the players are quite young, their focus would go down if they play a best of 3 or best of 5 match, and their performance would drop in like game 4 or game 5, which we have also seen in the MSC. However, like they still look very clutch and very focused at the end of the both Gen.G and T1 series. So I think DRX already overachieved in terms of their potential in the spring split, and I think they're overachieving even further from that in the summer split, which is super exciting to see because this was a gamble, this was a dice for CVMX for whoever put the roster together, and it's working out. Yeah, I'm super impressed.
Yeah, I mean, mad props to CV Max generally. Like, I think if you look at this guy's career already, he's already got such a unique reputation. Obviously, not for the other stuff in the offseason, but bad, just the way he's built these players up and picked out players. And he literally is a person with the cliches. He's done it his way.
Yeah. I think it's great. I'm really glad that you brought up the fact that DragonX did win in 3 games, right? And this is a team that even you look back at MSC, as the day went on, as the tiebreakers started to stack up, this team deteriorated, right? And that was what I was always really worried about. It seemed like as the day went on, they couldn't really keep up the pressure. And like one of the things that we've always praised T1 for forever is just the fact that they are unstoppable. You know, like they constantly ramp up and they get better and better. And yes, it wasn't good enough at Worlds and all this sort of stuff, and you can talk about that all you like, but this is a team that downloads their opponent and then takes them down. And that was always what was really impressive. DRX were the opposite. They would come at you like super hard.
Yes.
And they're like a tennis player with an amazing serve. You know, this incredible serve that goes really, really fast, and then
but you better ace the guy, yeah.
And then like you get to the third set, and it's like if the other guy wins the third set, well, I guess it's over.
Sure,
you know, and that's what DRX are about. But the fact that they won against T1 and Gen.G over 3 games both times means that they've been able to not only mentally bounce back after a loss, but also being able to, you know, keep up the performance over a series, which I think is like super impressive for a team that just straight up wasn't able to do that in the past. And so like, I think that they're definitely, there is stuff to tidy up. Like the macro play for DragonX in a lot of their games was just awful. But
something of a calling card for them at this point in time.
They were also awful. No,
What's up with the KR Baron? What's up with the KR Baron? I don't get it.
I'm not entirely sure. And some of their trades were super weird. There was one that LS got really upset about, which was when they went for a Baron instead of a Soul Point Dragon. But I actually thought that was cool because like you were talking about, they draft super early game. And so after that Baron, they got like a 6,000 gold power play or something like that. And the game was over because they were just too far ahead. And being able to utilize an early game comp and get to a point where you're insurmountably ahead is the goal of an early game comp. So I understood like playing to your win conditions there. That made some sense. But some of their other choices certainly were not along those lines. And you can't even, it's very hard to work out what they were aiming to do. But certainly things look good after the first week. We'll just have to, you know, calm ourselves down. I think the same thing can be said for Damwon. Like we're excited about Damwon, but we're not going to, you know, jump to any conclusions just yet. But yeah, DRX also, like, I think Carrier is the best support in the world at the moment. He is super good. And Chobi's playing amazingly well. It's just hard when you've got Chobi and Showmaker in the same
You can do
league.
that, yeah, sure. Some would say me just appearing on shores is offensive, so you can swear. It's fine.
Just double checking. I do want to add, like, I think it's really cool that Max brought about the early game aggression. I do want to reiterate on that a little bit. I know that this has been an ongoing meme, partly because of prejudice and partly because it's true that LCK is a bit resident sleeper. You know, that LCK likes to drop towards late game comp. There is a reason that Aphelios is doing really, really well in LCK. You know, they drop towards the whole EU style, and it's all about the AD carrying at the end. But yes, the MSC loss, the LCK's MSC loss against the LPL hit hard for the fans and also seemingly the teams. And in the past, LCK has been trying to mold to the more volatile, aggressive meta. And I've seen them again and again try to draft towards more early comp. But it seemed like the teams were simply not used to executing those early game comps, especially on the stage. Maybe they worked on the scrims, but could be a mental ball, could be something else that I'm not aware of, but they weren't able to execute it. They'll play passively, despite maybe picking Kalista or Pantheon, and then let the snowball go to the other way. But this week, at least, and I am aware that this is only first week of the LCK, I've seen T1 play more aggressively. I've seen Gen.G play more aggressive. I've seen Salhewon, of course, and Damwon, of course, play super aggressively. And I've seen DRX actually draft an early game comp, which they have done in the past, but have the early game aggression and decisiveness to make it work, which I think is a really, really great takeaway. And I talked to the players in DRX, in Gen.G, that have said, yes, we have taken a lot out of the MSC. So I actually don't think that loss was too unfavorable for us.
Yeah, there's also
the kick up the ass we needed.
Yeah.
No, that's also the other thing that I think's cool. If you're someone who hasn't watched that much LCK, maybe you only watch the finals or something, or you watch the teams when they go international. This is the team that is the exception to the rule that Korea's had this like weird meta read the whole time. Like this is the team that's more like an LPL team. Like I look at this team, it reminds me more of like IG or something. Like they're willing to just go super all in early. And actually, the thing that's kind of cool about that is that shows CV Max is not someone who's like a one-dimensional coach, because when he used to have Griffin with Tarzan, because Tarzan's strengths aren't to just like go gamble everything early, they used to be criticized for not doing stuff on and off early. Like they would just sort of chill while he just figured out what they were going to do and then find the moment to win the game. So I think it's like this guy, for all the flame all the Korean coaches are getting, this is an example of a Korean coach who looks like he's doing a really good job. And as we say, most of the problems with the team, it's more like inexperienced players. He had to put the roster together last minute. There was some issues even there. He didn't get some of the players he wanted. Like I actually give this team a lot of good marks. Like even their flaws are sort of like in line with where they almost should be as a team. It's not like a critical flaw in the thinking or the lineup that's going to inhibit them, I don't think.
And I completely agree with you. And I think that it's really cool to see DRX identify what their weaknesses were, and then you can see the changes that they've made over the year. And I think that that's brilliant. I'm glad that you brought up the fact that, you know, Tarzan's a very different player. Griffin was a very different team. They were all about team fighting. They had that cerebral hive mind. They didn't even need to talk. It seemed like they were a robot entity. And there's Mother Brain up here controlling the marionettes of all of the different players. DRX are a completely different squad, right? This is a team that's flashy. That's a team that's exciting, and this is a team that plays completely differently. But CV Max has identified what the strengths and weaknesses are of the players, right? And it's, you know, have explosiveness in the early game, and then allow Deft to be sort of like that thing that they can rely on in the late game in order to win, things like that. And I think Deft has actually been the player that's underperforming at the moment on DRX. And I think that's fantastic, to be honest, because they've got a bunch of rookies that need to, you know, start stepping it up. I wouldn't include Doran in that, but I think Pioshik had a really rough spring, and I think that Keria is this untapped force of power that DRX can certainly leverage. And seeing them finally reaching this potential is like really, really cool. And being able to say that Deft is the player on the team that's underperforming, like that just shows that obviously like potential is starting to be reached. And that's really, really cool for this squad. So DRX are definitely behind CV Max, working a lot better than what they were, what Griffin was towards the end of all of that craziness. And I don't want to go into it.
All right, let's move into the teams that, for good or for ill, are underwhelming. So let's talk about Gen.G, the team that finished the regular season of spring at top position, but then did the classic. It's the move that Griffin used to do, which is you go straight to the finals, but then you play T1 and you lose because it's T1. So they didn't go, obviously, to the non-existent MSI. They just finished second, sadly. And we didn't get to see anything else from them in the playoffs because the way the gauntlet system works, they were just waiting in the finals. So, right, with this team, just give us your thoughts immediately, Ash, on this one. I want to just comment. No bias or anything. What do you just think of Gen.G at the moment and what in the current form?
In the very current form, I actually say hopeful. Yeah. That's my one sentence.
What gives you hope?
Max is giving me a very,
what gives you hope,
eyes there. Okay, so going back to the beginning of the spring split, Gen.G put out this crazy roster. You know, Klid was hyped as the best jungler in the world, maybe after Yankos and Tian. But, you know, Glid was getting hyped up and everyone wanted Klid. And BDD was, even then, arguably the best mid laner in Korea, which has been confirmed throughout the spring split. And Roller is a super, I wouldn't say consistent, but very, very high level AD carry, a world champion himself. And this looked like a really good roster with a lot of really raw power. And the criticism that Gen.G had throughout the split was that they can sometimes play very one-dimensional, but it also seemed like Gen.G in scrims, from what we have heard in what players expressed through multiple interviews, is that Gen.G can play a more aggressive in the scrims, leveraging the raw mechanical power of the individual players, but they weren't always able to translate this into the stage games. And even though their decision making nor drops. And I know that Gen.G is also going through that, transition period where they may or may not look for a new head coach now that Edgar has stepped down. Yes, their drops have looked a bit shaky at times, and their decision making, maybe Max can add a bit more to that, but they have tried to play more early game. They have tried to play more aggressively. So in that way, I find it a bit more hopeful, because if they start playing in a way that the solo laners and the jungler Clid can untap their full mechanical power, I think Gen.G will be a more powerful iteration of what they had shown in the summer split, which was honestly underwhelming.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in a bit of a different camp. I think that Gen.G have only won games so far. In the first week, they've only won when they've had gigantic draft advantages. It's the only games that they've won. They won one game against DRX. That was because they hard countered top lane with their amazing Malphite pick. That was then able to just destroy, and then they team fought their way to victory, and then promptly lost the next game because DRX actually didn't draft like potatoes. Up against KT, they lost the first game in spectacular fashion. I thought KT played that one very well. But then the next two games, it was them going back to old Gen.G. It was the Ashe comps. It was Galio mid lane. It was, we're going to wombo combo you and you're going to come into us because LCK seems to only know how to play team fight, and we're going to beat you in the late game and we're going to take you down. And it felt like in a few of their games, they were, yes, trying to play early game, but they didn't win any of those. They only won the games where they were scaling in team fighting, which is old Gen.G that hasn't actually evolved, right? And so I think that there are some teething issues that definitely need to get themselves out. I think one shining light for Gen.G is that Rascal's been playing really, really well. I mentioned the Malphite pick. He plays that amazingly in lane. He crushed Smeb like... Oh man, Smeb showed exactly why Smeb is an amazing player, because he still managed to win a game after getting so slaughtered, like just the most wrecked in the top lane, but still found flank teleports in pure Smeb style. We know him as Cannon coming from off to the side, and just destroying people with slicing maelstroms. He did the same thing with a Wukong Cyclone, and yes, Wukong's very strong at the moment, but it's Smeb, right? He always finds the angles. And that was beautiful to watch, especially in their first game. But even afterwards, Rascal just had his number over and over again. And even against Thorin, Rascal did look good in a lot of their matches. So I think Gen.G's topside is looking good. I mean, BDD's, he's currently third in MVP standings, something like that. BDD has been carrying a lot, but I think Clid has been, I don't know what's happened, but even in the games that they won, Clid looked completely lost. He got 9 marks as Kindred and died to Baron. I don't know. Clid is a really, really good player, but he's certainly had a rough first week that they need to sort out. And Ruler seems to be just going through supports, and they're trying to figure out what they want to do there. So I think Gen.G certainly, they still have the potential to be the best team in the LCK. I think we all said that at the beginning of the year. They have an amazing roster, but yeah, not working yet.
Yeah, I'd also add in as... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say the reason why I said hopeful is this is only week 1 in the LCK, and I do not doubt that Gen.G will make it to playoffs. So, if Gen.G was actually drafting the late game comps all the time and likely winning a lot more, then I will be actually more worried, because we have seen
not actually trying to change.
Yeah, we've seen an ending to that movie, and there was getting 3-0'd by T1 at the end of the spring split. So even though they're dropping a few of their games, and even though their decision making is imperfect, I say hopeful, despite the results, that they are experimenting right now at week 1 of LCK Summer Split.
Sure. I mean, to touch on the point Max said there about Clid being a little bit off, I would also say that's because the roster on paper is so good. That's like probably to me the most key synergy is Clid and BDD. Because if you look at the splits when BDD wins his MVPs, it's when he's got a really strong mechanical jungler who's aggressive, like when he used to have Peanut back in the day. But if you look at the time when everyone thought he fell off, it's because he had Score. Score's not that type of a jungler. Like it's a totally different. It's the other style. So to me, that was like a mismatch of players. Whereas if you give these two, if they have play against anyone who's basically a worse jungle mid, Gen.G has the advantage in the series. Like that's one of the ways they can be the champions, in my opinion. Like I agree. They're the ones where last split, like I actually had them picked from the beginning as being the best team. It's just that, as we all know with the way the gauntlet system works, sometimes if you're a brand new lineup, it can be a blessing and a curse to just go straight to the finals. You know, you don't get the warm-up period. You don't get to have that first match against some lower team and figure things out. You have to just be ready in the finals. And if someone like T1 comes along, it can be a rough time, as everyone has found out for the last year and a half.
Yeah, they are gauntlet runners as well. T1, they're very, very good at it. So Gen.G used to be known for that, but that's only in Worlds qualifiers. It's not in actual playoffs. Yes. It's not how that works.
Right, what about if we go... Yeah, why don't we transition to T1 then? Because it's obviously the team we need to talk about. Because the problem with this is... Right, T1 themselves were obviously a team that was fairly underwhelming at the MSC, didn't really do a whole lot, and even though people wanted to believe, people wished they could have been better, but that's basically been the story of the top Korean seed for the last few years. Ashley, where are you on T1? Hopeful about this team? Not as much?
I want to give a baton to Max for this one, and I'll just add on to that if that is okay.
All right, yeah, go on then, Max.
All right, I guess I'll take this bullet. That sounds fine. I think T1 were underwhelming. But I'll preface this with name in the last 2 years. Name a week one where T1 have looked good.
They do start splits badly, don't they?
They suck at the beginning of a split every single time. It takes a lot of they have to work out the teething issues. And so I'm not worried at all about T1. I think that they will get themselves up to speed. They just take a while. It's a real heavy wheel, and you got to really push it at the beginning. But once it gets going, laws of momentum, things are absolutely fine. I think that I think T1 will be absolutely okay. I think what they need to do is get around some of their drafting issues. I think there has been some stuff brought up about Coach Kim having some really weird ideas of what works currently. I think that when Coach Kim gets his head around a meta, he's very, very good. But he hasn't got his head around this one yet, and he needs to figure it out. And we'll see what T1 are going to be able to do. But I'm not worried. I think that Cuz and Faker are a fantastic jungle mid duo. I think it's one of the best jungle mids that T1 has had. I think when we were talking about Clid's gone, how we're supposed to make this one work, I think it's absolutely okay. The one thing that I think is a little bit hilarious is that Keria subbed out 2 phenomenal support players. Life went up against Keria immediately the next game, subbed out. Kellen played that entire series. Effort played against Keria, got subbed out for the first 2 games, and then came back and absolutely Ashley?
Curry first, and then Effort got subbed in.
Yeah, but in the series. So Effort played the first match against DragonX. Didn't he? I'm pretty sure Effort played that entire match.
It was Curry starting. I remember taking videos of Curry.
The scoreboard says Effort in game 1.
Okay. Sorry. That's me.
Yeah. So Effort played the final game against Hanwha Life and actually picked up the player of the game because Effort's really damn good.
Curry didn't play at all. Did Curry play at all in the?
Sorry, I was looking at the wrong series.
Oh yeah.
Actually,
the DragonX series,
Gamepedia says against Hanwha, Curry played first.
That's what you mean. Yeah.
It was a different series he was talking about.
Yeah. And so Effort comes back in that Hanwha Life series, and I think we realized that Effort is actually ridiculously good. I think a lot of people have been talking about Effort really coming into his own for T1, and I think that their last draft, the one that seemed like they'd gone back to 2019, was actually fantastic. The Zaya Rakan looked really good. Teddy looked amazing as usual. I think Effort's Rakan is one of the best in the world. I think he's only lost twice in the LCK on that champion and played it like 20 times. So that was definitely good to see. And that was the last game that we saw from this team, right? And they are on an upward trajectory with how it's going. And yes, you might look at them, they're equal fifth with Gen.G right now, sitting at 0 points, but I don't think you're going to worry about T1. I think I'm more worried about Gen.G than I am about T1 at this point in time, because you just, I still have the trust for T1, and I don't know whether I'm there yet for Gen.G. You know, I'm still tentative.
Trust issues with Gen.G, understandably.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a KT fan, so trust issues they run pretty strongly.
Right, come on, Ashley. What do you think? What do you want to jump on there?
T1 has such a good track record, such a reliable track record when it comes to playoffs, when it comes to best of fives, when it comes for them to stepping back later in the split. We remember the summer split 2019 when T1 dropped all the way to the 9th place.
Yes.
And climbed back all the way.
I think they started like 1-5 or something crazy, right? In best of 3 series. It was really bad record.
Yeah. It's like the worst it was even worse than the horrible days of 2018.
Which says a lot.
At the beginning.
And this is, I think a lot of it comes from Faker just having so much experience. And I think this is amazing thing about Faker. Like, even when he has won a championship or not, whether he is on the 9th place or the 1st place, he wants to play the next game perfectly well, just as much as in any other situation. And in that way, I also see Teddy as a very, very consistent player. Maybe I am missing, like, maybe I'm not seeing something that I should be seeing, but from what I've experienced, Teddy has always been the very, very reliable AD carry, at least domestically in the LCK, that I haven't seen a notable variation in his performance. And it's so good to have those 2 players as the main dealers and carry lanes and pillars of T1. And I think that helps so much with T1. I am not worried about T1. And I do want to also call out Kana. And I think, Max, you noticed that I love narratives when it comes to rookies. I do have a bit of a soft spot for rookies. And Kana came in to fill up a huge shoes that was missed by Khan, and we didn't know what to expect of him. And he was supposed to be, when he was stepping into the LCK stage, we only knew him from his solo queue games, which was like, him playing a bunch of Aurelias. Oh, he's gonna be one of those super aggressive, top laners. Then he came in. Oh my god, he's really good at Orin. He's really good at champions like Jace. So he's actually a versatile player. I don't think we have seen the peak of Kana yet. I will still comment on bits and pieces of how he executes the lane as well as the team fights, but that's even more hopeful because T1 could improve even further from their spring split performance. That's what I'm really hopeful about, yeah.
I have to say, I was actually, I also, was like getting to know Kana in the spring split. I thought in the playoffs, he particularly impressed me, actually. He really came alive in some of those series where obviously he was playing some of the better top laners in the region. I'd actually also point out as well, to touch on the Faker angle, because I always bring up that narrative that if you're a Western fan, you got to stop thinking Faker's like Season 3 Faker and he just like styles on everyone and goes absolutely mental. Like, he doesn't even do that in laning phase sometimes. That's more like something like a Chovy or BDD or someone, So I would say this, one of the ways you can see the insane veteran like knowledge Faker has of the game is when he has to carry and when he gets the right champion and has map pressure, etc. He does carry. But this game he played at the end of the Hanwha Life series is why Faker will still be one of the most valuable players in the world, because he just played Karma and just let himself be carried. Like, he actually understands how to let someone else, in this case, who's Teddy Zaya, just let him carry the game, and I will actually be essentially like another support on the map, but as a result, we win the game. Like, there's a lot of players out there where their ego to be the best is like they have to look the best as well, whereas those can be 2 different things. Like, to me, that can sometimes be a trap, even though it can be cool when you can pull it off, like, Rookie and the Shy have in the past, etc. Let yourself be carried. There's a lesson to everyone in solo queue.
That whole thing is something that I think gets completely overlooked. Like, one of Faker's best champions that he's ever played is Lulu.
Exactly.
Like, he played that so many times, right? Even when Lulu was not necessarily like the key pick in the meta, like Faker's Lulu was extraordinarily good, and he makes the rest of his team better. And I'm not saying that like Faker isn't like a carry player, because he is. Like, this guy like solo won a game playing mid Tristana and took down like 15 turrets, and they weren't even that many in the game. Like, he does that when he has to, but also his facilitative, utility-based play is so good because he's just so good at League of Legends. That's why we call him the GOAT, because the game is what Faker's the best at. Not just mid lane. He's not just like mechanically going to outplay you. He's just better at League of Legends than everyone else. And I think that I'm really glad that you brought that up, that him playing Karma after playing a carry beforehand. I think we saw his Twisted Fate in that series. And then, you know, just hard carries, like does a bajillion damage to turrets. And then just moves over to the Karma, takes a back seat and gets the shields in the right spot. And of course, Teddy's going to be able to carry because he's got one of the best utility players in the world behind him.
It's also why, even though I'm not hating on them, not least because like Coleman's not there anymore and he's the main person I used to hate on, but I'm not hating on the T1 coaches. But I have always said, if you're a T1 coach, you better win Worlds, because otherwise I'm going to be like, wait a minute, you didn't win Worlds when you had Faker and all the other talents, etc. Like this guy, that like what we've just described is a coach's dream to have in theory like one of the best mid laners, and then he says, like, all right, coach, yeah, you can just put me on that supportive champion to play this comp that you want to play. Like, no problem there. I can tell you right now, I won't mention any names. Put it this way, they might have played for teams like Cloud9 in the past. I know some mid laners where they would throw a tantrum privately if they didn't get the pick they wanted, or they got like the losing mid lane matchup, because they didn't want to feel like they lost the game or they couldn't do anything in the game. They always wanted to believe they could at least win their lane in the game, which is, again, that listen, so maybe someone needs that for their ego, but that might be what means you don't win championships sometimes, unfortunately. And
that is the amazing, almost inhuman characteristic of Faker that I always go back. Like, people are humans and people sometimes get tired, and sometimes you would be less hungry about a championship right after you won it in 0-3. But like I said, I have no doubt that Faker wants to win Summer just as much as last split, last year, as much as 2018, much as 2014, just as much as when he first won the championship.
Sure.
That guy is so driven, and he has eye on one thing only, and that is to win games, win championships, and win worlds. And I would also say that Faker would have some pride, justifiably, but when it comes to winning games, that overrides everything else. That's how I feel. And touching base on the understanding of the game really quickly, I was listening to the voice comms of one of the Baron tries that T1 was having in one of the Spring Split games, and Faker was on Azir, and they were trying to sneak Baron, and he started hitting Baron, and okay, I'm going to start hitting Baron, and it's going to take 20 seconds. It took exactly 20 seconds. Like, he knew that down to an exact second. Like, it was like the minute understanding of the game that he has is amazing, and I simply guess that we don't see the extent that Faker contributes to the rest of his teammates. Yeah.
I'd also touch on that angle that, like, he never seems to lose the appetite to win, because the crazy thing about that is, like, that is like the defining factor of most of the really great players in any sports that I've ever seen, is that they have this quality. I remember best, like, I saw an interview with Kobe Bryant many years ago where someone asked him basically, like, how do you keep getting motivated if you've just won the championship to win the next year, right? Because what they think is what most people think, which is if you put that as the end of the goal, like, the goal is to be a champion one day. So you think, like, right, I've done it, right, I want to chill now. So you take the summer off, you celebrate, and what you think is, like, you know, I'll start thinking about the next season, you know, maybe once we even begin the next season, I'll start, like, you know, winding up to get in the playoffs again, then I'll worry about winning again. And he said, literally, even though the day you win the championship, you do feel that elation, like, oh, I did it. He said the next day he would wake up and be like, that was yesterday, though, so I've got to win the next one. And he would just be back on track again. Like, he would be back in the gym working. And that is such a unique quality. That's why I saw this stat the other day. Faker's just won too many times that people have almost got, like, you know, when someone breaks too many records, you get, like, numbers fatigue, where you don't even remember some of the records, right? Faker has won 9 domestic championships, right? Think about how ridiculous this is. Even if LCK isn't the best region now, it was for a long time. How does he have the most championships of any player in any region? Like, nobody in Europe has that many European championships. Nobody in NA, Doublelift doesn't have that many championships. Nobody in LPL has that many championships. Like, the idea that for mostly the best region, he has the most championships. It's like, normally you can make debates about whether the person with the most championships is the GOAT. It's like, this guy just goes, right, I'll just take that part of the equation out of it. And also, everyone said I was the GOAT anyway. It's like, I'll just make it an indisputable fact at this point in time. It's not even like an opinion, is it? That's so crazy.
And also-
9 championships.
9 championships, and in the meantime also wins 3 world championships.
Just mess around and win a few worlds and MSIs, yeah.
Yeah, and like 66% of those world championships were against other Korean teams at the same time anyway, right? So obviously, like, that region was the hardest region to win in, and he's won. Yeah, no. I think as far as like the GOAT arguments are concerned, it's like the easiest one. It feels so good,
Okay,
you know, like,
there's no doubt.
like you can be talking about like who's the best cricketer, who's the best this, who's the best that, and it's like there's a debate. Doesn't matter. In League of Legends, it's obvious and it's too easy. It's actually fantastic. I love it.
I was once a translator for a conversation between the Afreeca Freecs head coach, I Love You, who was a very known StarCraft player.
Of course,
back in the
yeah,
day.
legend.
So I Love You was having a conversation with the ESPN esports reporter, Fiona on Fire, Tyler.
Okay.
And what I Love You drew a lot of comparison between Boxer, who is also a GOAT on his own right, and Faker. That I Love You has seen what Boxer does, and Boxer, even when he won the championship, on the same night, he will go back and review his own games. On the same night he's won a championship. And when I Love You saw that, okay, this is beyond my level. I would never see another human who is like that. But then he saw Faker do the same thing. So I guess that is the dedication you need to have in order to become a legendary GOAT in your own game. Correct.
Either that or something that you have to do if you're a member of SKT, because I think Boxer also was a
Yes, he was.
yeah,
Classically.
sure.
player
Yes,
as
they were
well.
both in T1, exactly, yeah. Right, okay, what about this then? So you've just referenced it there, so perfect segue. The other team I want to talk about is Afreeca Freecs, because the interesting thing about this team was they had a very interesting roster in the spring, and they had moments where they looked good. They also had moments where it was like, what's going on with this team? And how did Mystic manage to go from the LPL, where he was trapped as like the Teddy of the LPL, like you have to hard carry every game, mate, otherwise you'd lose, to come to Korea and have to do it again? Because the problem with the Afreeca is, like, they always put together rosters that look like, yeah, there's something to this, but it's been a while since they've had one, basically after the one that got killed by Cloud9 at Worlds a few years back. It's been a while since they had one that actually looked like it contended for the championship, though. So who wants to start on this one? Actually, what I'll do here is, as the host, you just choose. Do you want to start on this one, or do you make Atlus start on this one? Who do you pick?
Okay, I'll start on this one briefly.
All right, there we go.
Okay. Thank you so much for asking. So I'm actually in an opposite position for Afreeca Freecs as I was in T1. Despite T1 starting week 1 on 1 win, 1 loss, I am not worried about them. Despite Afreeca Freecs starting week 1 on 2-0, I am very worried about them. And it's simply based on the track record where we actually saw Afreeca Freecs win the Kespa Cup, which is that short cup right before the spring split. And we saw them have a very, very great first round robin in the spring split. And then they kind of deteriorated. It might be that a lot of the players that are in Afreeca Freecs are very meta specific. As in, when a meta comes and let's say there are 10 champions that you can play in a certain meta on a given role. Okay, maybe Fly. I have to mention a specific. Can only play 1 or 2 champions on that particular meta. And it seems
Same old
that,
story then.
Yeah. It seems that in the beginning of a split, when they had a few weeks to prepare towards that meta, and then they know, okay, so out of those 10 champions, we can really abuse one of those 2 champions and we can abuse the specific strategies. They seem to excel, but when the meta continues to change, and because they're playing matches all the time, and that means that they can't find a perfect pick with a particular meta all the time, and they kind of have to adapt on the fly or just play a different champion in a while, they slowly seem to deteriorate. And I think Keen is a great, amazing all-around player, but he does seem to tilt and not be able to be the 1v9 carry when the rest of the team is doing that well. So despite the fact that Afreeca seems to have a good start to the split, I would be tentative but also hopeful that they carry on this momentum for the rest of the split, which they unfortunately haven't been able to do in the last split or last year in general.
Sure. Okay, Max, what do you think?
I think that we know nothing about Afreeca. because they beat the two teams that came out of the promotion tournament.
That's true.
And Sandbox look like they're made of potato. They look, just haven't sorted themselves out yet at all. They didn't have a coach in the country. So obviously that team is, I think they're going to go up, right? But this week one, Sandbox looked terrible. So all of the matches that Sandbox played, the two matches that they played, I think you can toss them out. And we didn't really learn
Afreeca.
much. Yeah.
You said Sandbox, yeah. Sorry.
No, I did. So I said if Sandbox is in the match,
I see what you mean. Right, it was like a free win. Yes, okay, that makes sense.
That's a freebie. Right. And Afreeca also managed to. Who else did they take down? They took down Team Dynamics.
Yes.
And Team Dynamics were able to win game one, I think, in that series, remembering correctly. So Dynamics beat them in the first game, and then Afreeca were able to, pull it back and utilize veteran status. But I think that they looked shaky at best. And Mystic played well, right? And actually, I want to talk about Mystic just for a little bit, because there was a reason why Afreeca looked pretty awful towards the end of the spring split, and that's because there were so many personal issues that Mystic had to go through. I hope no one has to. I don't want to talk about it.
Is this all behind the scenes stuff about family and stuff, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And it's really, really sad. If you desperately want to know, you can look it up, but I don't want to talk about it because it just doesn't feel appropriate. But yeah, he went through some really, really rough times, probably the roughest you can possibly go through. And he came back out the other end, and in the start of the summer split, he's looking okay. But the team still, it's 60% WE from 3 years ago.
True.
And I don't know what that means. And I think that what Ashley was talking about with Damwon, early Damwon, right, where they had to play with either Punch or Flame. I think that's the reason why they're playing Spirit, is because they need someone that can tell people what to do. And I think one of the reasons why they bring back Mystic is hoping that he can do that. But I don't know whether he's the right player to try and be the Jackie Love or the Ghost or, the Deft to try and take care of the team. It definitely wasn't the case at the end of spring. And I think Afreeca are hoping that that's going to be a thing that they can rely on. And I think that they've settled on a roster more than they ever have over the last 3 years, because they like to experiment.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't think we've learned anything about Afreeca yet, and we'll have to see what happens in week 2.
Sure. The thing I find about, like I say, the roster I still find quite fun. I've been a big fan of Mystics. I used to watch the LPL, and that's the only reason basically to watch WE for a few years. And if people forget,
when Mystic and Xian joined the team, right? In WE,
it was the famous one that I am. Yeah, right? Exactly. Yes, they turned the team around. They were 12th place at the time. What people forget is this guy is mad underrated for his career, because I bet a lot of fans listening now don't even know he was top 4 at Worlds once. I think it was season 7. Go back. That's the best Cloud9 or NA's ever done. This guy's done that in his career. He's been a player in China, where I'm going to go, I don't know, does he actually speak Mandarin? Do you know, Ashley?
No, he says
he was there for a long time, but I don't think he was fluent.
Right. Because here's the thing, to be fair, he had Ben, this Korean, as his bot lane partner. He had a Korean bot lane. But even so, listen, I will say, of all the roles that could probably get away with not talking the same language, AD carry, you do just left click people. But even so, to be even trying to challenge in the LPL when you don't speak Chinese is amazing to me. To have the mental fortitude to carry in that scenario. And so in the spring, there were games early on where he was hard carrying, and you've seen here, in the Felios game, this guy can go really ham. He's a really awesome player to watch. It's just that for some reason, this is the team where I like the roster, but I don't know if it all fits together. For example, Spirit, when you bring him in, listen, Spirit doesn't have any problem playing. I actually think the meta might be good switch for him, because I think of him now as more of he likes to play the farm up style, He's not the old school gank player in that sense. So it may be the meta's moving in his direction. That could help. Although to be fair, I don't really know what's going on with some of the jungle picks in Korea, but that's by the by. I'm not LS. That's not going to be. That'll be on the other show. But watch the Pog State if you want to hear people complain about the lack of graves or whatever. I bet I can just guess I'll do a bingo one time and send it to Atlus, and we'll see how many things I get before the episode comes out. I'll just guess at what you talked about in it, because I know that guy's mind way too well. So what I would say is this: my big problem with this team is this. I think the Mystic's awesome. Keen can be very, very good. Spirit, definitely competent. The big problem is this. I'll make the same argument I always make in LEC, and it has never failed me yet, which is good luck trying to win LEC or LCK without an amazing mid laner. an amazing mid laner. And the big problem is, listen, Fly has always somehow, he's like the Paul Belter of Korea. Somehow he's always competent. Like, he's never terrible. But I'll tell you what, I'm just going to say, if a guy who couldn't qualify to the LCS with Gold Coin United is going to win LCK, then you know what? I'll throw my hands up and say I was wrong. I judged you incorrectly. But I'm just going to go ahead and say I don't see it happening. I'm sorry. It's not like Fly, as Ashley just said there, he's played a million years and he's still working on getting like 4 active champions at one time. Like, you know, it's like the problem is you can reach a competency threshold, but the mid lane roles, it's very rarely ever going to be like the tertiary carry, you know. It's nearly always going to be one of the most important ones. So if you believe in Fly and you think you can win, God bless. But that's why I'm sort of out a bit. I'm a bit of a hater in that regard.
It's rough being Fly, though, at the moment. Like, Chovy is in extraordinary form. Showmaker is Showmaker. We explained exactly why he's just ridiculous. Faker exists. BDD's is still back. Amazing. Like, there's just too many good mid laners for you to be a role player mid laner. You just can't. Because there are too many players in the LCK that will punish you way too hard if you can't lane against them. And the problem with mid is that if you lose control of that, then it overflows everywhere else, and you've lost every lane all of a sudden. And Fly's like sitting there, like playing Lissandra, wondering why he can't yell at a minion wave anymore because he's lost 2 of his turrets at 15 minutes. You know, it's so hard being Fly, and I feel sorry for him because in a meta where you could have facilitative mid lanes, and we were talking about Karma being a thing. Karma can still win a lane. We saw Faker was split pushing on it. Sure. Like you can still be like that level of player on a Karma. It doesn't actually matter that much. But Fly can't. He just isn't the kind of player that's going to win a lane. He just isn't that guy. He likes to play around the rest of his team, and that's really cool. But it doesn't really work. And one of the things that you'll notice about Afreeca is every single Player of the Game award went to Mystic. And what that tells me isn't that Mystic's an amazing player, even though he is. What it tells me is that Afreeca have a completely one-dimensional style, which is to play around their AD carry and team fight in the mid to late game, and then they'll win. And if that doesn't work, they lose.
Yes.
And I need to see more.
I know that current bot lane meta is all about Israel and Aphelios, 200 years, and then sometimes a bit of an Ashe. But what if the meta changes and the focus has to go to the mid lane? And what's going to happen to Afreeca now?
They lose. That's what we saw.
It's going to be a problem, yeah.
And like honestly, like there is a lot of focus in the mid lane now, especially around the early stages of the game. Like even if you have a bot-centric meta, mid is still important because you can use your mid lane to team up with your jungler and 4-man dive bot lane. That's been,
basically Doinby and
part of League of Legends for a really long time. And like that's why Doinby like won Worlds, because he's so good at getting to the bottom lane and putting them ahead. That was how they won. And that wasn't necessarily from him being an amazing laner. Doinby's he's like Noggery. He's just his own unit. You can't really compare him to other stuff. He's just a Doinby. He's an anomaly, and he's an amazing one. We don't need to have the Doinby discussion, but
it's all right.
I think like the whole like mid overflow problem is a huge issue for Afreeca and for Mystic as well. I mean, to Mystic's credit, he's still able to get some advantages, but often Mystic is playing from behind and then wins an amazing team fight, largely off the back of Spirit and Keen being really good team fighters. They are very good at that. But unfortunately, Afreeca they can't reliably get to the point where they can team fight on even footing when Mystic can carry. And I don't know whether they're ever going to be able to do it against some of the teams, because I'm just like looking at the rosters and it just doesn't fit. You're trying to do the jigsaw puzzle, and it's like I'm trying to fit Afreeca Freecs in the top part of the jigsaw, and the piece seems to fit down here in 7th place.
I'll give you another area where like the 2 players have a disconnect, which is when I said like Spirit's in a scenario now where you can play carry junglers, and if you've watched Spirit's career, especially when he was on WE, this guy would just like 1v5 games on Nidalee. Well, as Monty made the point on Summoning Insight, yes, when you have carry junglers like that and you can play other things in the mid lane, these more supportive things, the Galio. The problem is, if you don't have priority from the mid lane, good luck playing that Nidalee. Like, it's going to be really hard for you now, mate. Like, so the problem I see there is his mid laners fly. Like, if his mid laner was BDD or something, now we can start talking. Maybe we're cooking with gas here, but I feel like that could be an issue. Yeah, it's just an example of where it's why I think like the discussion, which I'm glad on a lot of shows has changed, isn't like, is this player good or bad? It's like, how did the GM do? How did the guy who put the team together? Like, what was his vision? What was he thinking this player was going to work with this other player? And actually, you see there's teams in the modern day where they have good players, but it's just a mismatch of players. And so it's going to be tough for them to ever be the best.
Yeah, and I think that's a brilliant point, which is, I don't want to bring up T1 too many times, but going back to that team, the fact that Canna came in and he could play Ornn was fantastic.
Sure.
Because too many chefs in a kitchen is a thing. And that was what the SKT or the T1 super team, that's the issue that they had, right? They had Khan up there towards the top side, who's a look at me top laner. They also had Marta, who's a look at me, do what I say support. Everyone on that team was like, look at me, I'm going to carry. Teddy was doing it without saying, look at me. He was just making everyone look at him by being the best.
He was just secure, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, but like, you can't have like a team full of carries. It's just not how you're going to win a game. You need to be able to facilitate. You need to have a team that can work together and like be able to achieve a goal that they're going to like, because it's just, Afreeca just don't have the pieces meshing. And my computer's really loud. Is that something you guys can hear?
We can hear something, but it just sounds like a train lightly passing in the background.
My computer's fan is like losing its mind.
Fair enough.
Also, it's been 2 hours.
You what?
Also, it's been 2 hours since we started.
Yeah, it's okay. Do you need to stop?
Yeah.
I mean, we've still got some ultimate sadness to get through. But
do you need to stop now, Ashley?
No, I should be okay.
Oh, okay, right. Okay, fair enough. Let me think. Yeah, I mean, I was just basically, like, we're not going to talk about every team. I was just, as Max sort of alluded to, I think that I was just going to talk about KT and then we'd end the show.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Because, that's just appropriate. After you watch KT,
maybe
you just want to... I can touch on that a bit. I mean, I certainly think they have some potential in the lineup. Yeah, let's do that. Actually, we'll end on the KT one. All right, then let's pivot. Let's talk a little bit about Hanwha Life Esports, because this is the team where they obviously had a pretty notable addition to the team, which is the good news about Griffin imploding, ruining everything about their legacy and then disappearing from LCK, is it freed Viper from prison. Now, listen, he wasn't in the best form last split necessarily, but he's been at times an elite AD carry in the region. And obviously, as is relevant right now, he's one of the only AD carries in Korea that would play those mages. That he actually had some little pocket picks he could pull out and get cheeky with in the past, in last year when everyone was judging everyone by the perks standard as it was. So you want to go first or second on this one, Ashley?
Okay, Max, what do you want?
That doesn't work. In that case, he's going first, isn't he? Right, you're going there, Max. You go first. Yeah, exactly.
You
oh no, okay.
It's all right. Go on, Atlas.
Sure.
Okay. Wait, Ashley, you going?
Okay,
you doing it?
Okay, I'll go. Yeah.
All right, come on.
It's okay. I don't think Viper was in a terrible form in the Springs, but I saw that he adjusted his playstyle quite heavily, given that the mid wasn't a pressure as it was during 2018 2019, and also he was playing with Irobe, now carry. So he has once been reunited with Legends. They seem to have had a good scrims based on the interviews that Kesman and a few other members of the players have expressed in the interview. And I would say that this team is very exciting to watch because both Nofe and Kesman is all about being a precursor when it comes to discovering the meta and discovering new drops. They actively explore to other regions such as LEC and LPL. Maybe not LEC and LPL and maybe not LCS, but so I would say that they have always tried to experiment with new approaches to draft, and Viper being this one guy who always plays everything from the bot lane, Aatrox to Silas to Pyke in the solo queue is a great bit to Hanwha Life Esports, but now they seem a bit lost on what they want to do in the upper side of the map. I would say Dudu actually look quite promising, and I will be interested to see whether they decide on Cad or Haru, who both didn't look super consistent. But if you look at the Soliko history, you know Vista, the guy who was originally a support in Hanwha Life Esports but played bot lane for a while, he's been practicing mid.
Wow. So he's going to go from support to AD carry to mid lane.
Because that's basically the problem with this team, right? Is that mid's the hole. Like they've been trying to fill that, whereas they've got some good players elsewhere.
Because
I disagree. I think Lava's actually all right.
It's all right, but I mean, like the difference is he's not up to the level of some of the others, is he?
Yeah, he didn't have a great start. But like, do you know? I've got an analogy. I know you like these, Thorin. I've got an analogy for Hanwha Life Esports. They're like everybody else got their group project, right? And they started work on it. That was the spring split. Hanwha Life, they're the lazy group. They got their group project in high school, and now it's like 3 days before it's due.
A lot of us can relate to this story. Keep going, preach.
Together.
Preach. Keep talking to us.
And it's just not necessarily. It's like I like the idea, you know, bringing in all of their trainees. I mean, Dudu had a pretty awful debut, to be honest, but he did show promise. I think CAD having the Canadian dollar in there is kind of fun. Miru looks all right. But then you've got Viper and Lahen's bottom lane, who yes have some synergy, but they haven't played with these other players before. And so what you've done is you've actually just changed to a completely different team for the summer split, and that's where you should be refining. It's not where you should be designing your new squad that you're going to play with. And yes, there were some exciting changes, but if they're going to be running with these trainees, which I wasn't expecting they were going to do, that's where I'm sort of like, well, yeah, you're not going to be able to reinvent the wheel in time for playoffs. And I'm not super, ready to put my money on Hanwha if they're going to be, you know, down the doo-doo track.
Which, by the way, if anyone doesn't know, is an actual name, but it's written D-U-D-U. They're not literally just trying to like a little kid say the guy's crap. By the way, I've got something for you here, Atlus. It's a little gift I'm going to give to you here. It's something you can use on the air, and it's a straight fire reference. So I like your joke there, that CAD, because obviously like that's like the way that you write in international like terminology, right? Canadian dollar.
Joke. I need to give credit where
I've got an update for it. Are you ready? So here's what you do. If CAD has a game where he goes crazy and carries, well, the other name for a Canadian dollar when it's actually the coin is a loony. So he goes loony. There you go. That's a little gift for you there, mate. That's for you.
That's so. When you were talking about it, I thought you might have made an AutoCAD reference, you know, where he's like, he's
that's not bad as well.
The whole jungle route in
rendering
with his AutoCAD. But that one's way better.
It's pretty good. Because then it's like his alter ego, you know, if he pops off and carries and goes crazy, you know.
Yeah.
There we go. It's all right. I come up with them every now and then. Yeah,
I love it. They've got a doo-doo and a loony. This is like the best named team that we've seen.
It's so unfortunate as well, because you just know, like the guy called Doo-Doo, he obviously has no idea what that means in the West, right, Ashley? Like, he doesn't know how bad that sounds.
He's actually named after. His name was Fatal. His name was super badass. Right. Sure. And then he's like, "Oh, Doo-Doo Dunga's a cool song for TFT Mobile. Let's do it." But I think he probably should have been the Dungus side of it, not the Doo-Doo side. But I guess, you know, you're a team in Korea. You don't care really what the West is going to think, and it's theoretically a Korean word, so we ain't going to judge him.
And I'll throw in there, by the way, one thing I'll throw in there for people who don't know is another reason people have a lot of hope for the Hanwha team is because, as you just mentioned, the coaching staff is bonkers for this team. Like, not only do you have Norfe, who everyone knows what he did, obviously, in Korea when he was with the Rocks Tigers, etc. But if people don't know Kesman, right, the problem is, before Koma, coaches never really got, like, they weren't a star as well in Korea. Like, most people probably couldn't even name the coaches of some of the other teams that were out there, unless they were a hardcore LCK fan. So if you don't know this guy, he was back back on the original like Azubu teams when they were the best. Then he was on the CJ teams when they were the best. Then later he was over in the LPL. He qualified with the IMA team, which was one of those weird teams that just made it out of nowhere to Worlds. Then he was with the RNG team that almost did like the G2 approach where you're just going to win everything in 1 year. And now he's in Korea. So like this guy's like those two together, that must be the craziest coaching staff in terms of resume, I think, in the whole world. That's bonkers. Yeah. And so the fact that they have these like players where they're trying to bring them up, that's a very interesting prospect. I want to see what they can do.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I brought up Kesman. I think this was like back in the during the Casper Cup, the very start of the year, and I was talking about like, because we had this massive coach reshuffle, right? And so we had to talk about these coaches, but Kesman really like flew under the radar for so many people, and we haven't really, like, we've spoken about it because they were sort of trying to be inventive. They played the Soraka comps and stuff like that in spring, but the results just didn't quite get to the point where we could start talking about him like he was a Coach Kim, you know, which is what he's actually done. He's achieved very similar things to what Coach Kim achieved, but not this year. And I'm like, I'm waiting for my moment to be able to like go off on like how excited I am about Kesman, but it just we haven't quite got there just yet. And maybe 2021 is what they're aiming for, right? Maybe this is a development roster that they're going to be able to get to, but yeah, it's sad because you're right. He's got like crazy pedigree, this dude.
I'll even chuck in there as well, if people don't know, the guy who was the coach last year for Hanwha, who was another CJ Azubu, graduate, which is on air, the original coach in Korean League. Well, what's funny is one of the things he did with Hanwha that made them interesting, even though they were like a bottom feeder, was he was one of the few people who wasn't just PR bullshitting you when he said, I'm going to make a 10-man roster. Like, I'm going for the lineup where you can bring in any role at any position. Well, at this team, as you've been alluding to with all the swaps, the only positions they don't swap in and out is the best positions, like the established bot lane that have played together for years at this point in time. So every other role, even though, you can dispute who it should be, they're actually trying a real rotation. Like, they're actually seeing who works there, and they don't seem like they've got a fixed view. Like, they're not stubborn that one guy has to stay in. So, to me, this is the experiment bottle. Like, this is like the petri dishes, this team. They're trying to see what they can do. Do you have some thoughts, Ashley? Look like you want to jump in.
Just like gonna quickly add that I did want to almost agree with Max on this could be their practice roster, because if I remember correctly, and
just agree with him then. Why did he say it in that way? Like, okay.
If I remember correctly, and the comment can correct me if I'm not, Kesman is actually contracted for 3 years.
Okay, if that's true,
so
I believe you.
This year. Max, feel free to check that.
Until the it's like November 2021. November 2022.
Yeah, there we go.
So he's contracted for 3 years. So this could. And given that Hanwha Life Esports is an organization based on a very established health insurance company in Korea, I have no insight on the franchising process, but if I looked at everything on the paper, Hanwha Life Esports has better chance of getting into franchising compared to like the mean
from a corporate side of things.
They're basically guaranteed. Yeah. I think it's
okay.
There's some awkward stuff that they have to get through as far as the type of company that they are. I think there's been a few issues there, but otherwise, I think it's almost a shoe-in, right? Because they
also, by the way,
made of money.
Also thematically genius.
With my words.
yeah. It's also thematically genius to have a backup player for every position if you're going to be an insurance company. I'm just saying, it's frugal. I like that. I don't know if they've thought of that, but if so, that's free.
Insurance company as well.
Yeah.
It's life insurance.
Yes,
there you go.
Life, right?
Listen,
so
you never know what can happen, Atlus. So you always got to have someone on deck.
Exactly. Their family's going to be set up.
Yeah. So if you look at the long-term things,
of course.
So if you look at the long-term things, that they have a very solid bot lane. Even though I think the bot lane is only contracted to this year, they might always resign. Hey, like they got a bunch of trainees they're trying out. So I'm not sure. I can't guess, but it might almost be a preliminary year before 2021.
And you can do that now because we've got franchising.
Oh, you're right. Yes, you can. True. Right, let's do it. Let's journey into the pit of eternal darkness that is KT Rolster. Because the interesting thing right now is they've even God damn them. They've even gone and done that thing where you get like some interesting players again, where it's like you start to want to believe. Whether it's not that you believe, listen, it's been ages since anyone was foolish enough to do that. It's like the poster though, you want to believe. It's like the UFO poster. Because here's the thing, if people don't know, as we alluded to earlier by Atlus when he was talking about playing the Kennen, Smeb is back after obviously just being AWOL for a while. And so, as well as him, they have Aiming, who, if people don't know, a couple of years ago on Afreeca Freecs, really looked like he was going to be like one of the next really good AD carries. He looked very strong, but I think he had it was toxicity issues or something, or he got banned from solo queue or something. Something bizarre happened to him that sort of high-tracked his career. And so at the time was when they had Kramer as well. They just put Kramer in instead, and he kind of like went by the wayside, but he has some potential. And then in mid lane, you have like, it's like they're just like an orphanage or something. They're just collecting up like unwanted people. It's like, Yukal and Kuro, like, has it come to this? You can't even just have, like, one starting spot. Like, you have to share a starting spot. Like, Kuro, they done you dirty, son. Like, you have some legendary accomplishments, and you were even good in LPL. Yukal, listen, mate, I called this years ago, and listen, I'll shout him out here. LS, you overrated Yukal, my dude. He was just on a team with, like, monsters around him, and his job was, don't be porn, stay alive, and just play like 2 champions, you know. I'm not hating, but I'd love that to be my first job. Just play with all the best players of all time and just cruise through. Now, listen, he definitely had some good games within that, but as you saw when he was on last year's Afreeca, he hasn't been a star mid laner, unfortunately. He's had his issues. So, like, this is a team where there's so many people could redeem themselves and look awesome, but, I mean, it hasn't happened yet. So here's the question. How many bullets do you put in the Russian roulette gun here of hope? Atlus, like, are you willing to put a few in? Are you putting none in? Where are you at on this team?
I mean, I saw one game where the stars aligned, and I saw what my KT is supposed to look like.
There we go.
I tweeted about it. I was actually really happy. I was really happy. It was Tucson there, able to save Bono from being an idiot, and that's been really, really hard because Bono does just some weird stuff. I saw Smeb feeding in lane and then just being this god of team fights that we know him as. Like, that was the beautiful Rocks Tigers Smeb that everyone wants to come back, right? That we're holding on to. The nostalgia is alive. And we saw Kuro playing his amazing TF, which is not about, like, you see Faker's TF, you know, and he's like killing everyone. He's split pushing, taking turrets. That's not how Kuro plays it. Kuro plays it to, like, make the rest of his team amazing. His destinies, like, provide exactly the vision that they're looking for. And then he's like pressing Zhonya's in the middle of the enemy team so that the rest of his team can win a team fight around him. It's like the selfless play style that Kuro offers. And then you've got Aiming and Tucson, which is like a really good bottom lane. Yeah. And Aiming's fantastic. Unless he's arcane shifting into a thresh hook, which is like what he used to do all the time. And
he's definitely aggressive
game,
for sure.
He had 300 armor as Ezreal and was just incredible. And then in the rest
that
of the
takes
game,
balls to build 300 armor on Ezreal as a Korean LCK player. I don't know if the coach appreciates that when we do that.
Well, no. That's the build, and it worked. They had, you know, three Mountain Drake, Mountain Soul. And he had Guardian Angel, Iceborne Gauntlet, Death Stance, and just...
Oh, right, yes, I guess that would add up, yeah.
So he actually had... It was a correct build. It was just ludicrous amounts of armor that he'd built up, and he was just a raid boss, and it was like the first time that we really saw why Ezreal was prioritized just over Aphelios, and then they proceeded to lose the series.
In true KT fashion, yeah.
Yeah. It was the most KT thing you've ever seen. But that first game.
Right, come on, what's funny, Ashley?
Isn't it funny that even 2 years ago, LPL is the league that had the best AD carries in the world. Like, you know, they still had Uzi. If I go even further back, you know, Deft was there, Mystic was there, and Korea was the land with all the top laners and the mid laners. And now I think it has kind of turned it around, because if I had to pick the 2 best top laners in the world, I'll probably pick 369 and Zhu, who are both playing in the LPL. If I had to pick the best mid laner in the world, I'll probably still pick Knight. Memes aside, I genuinely say Knight look like the best mid laner in the world right now. And meanwhile, Korean's AD carry pool looks super stacked. Like, you know, we got the likes of BDD, Teddy and Ruler, who are supposed to be the top three, and I would even throw Hybrid, the
Yeah, sure.
AD carry.
He's been hard carrying some games. Yeah.
And aiming is super good. I think aiming is really, really decent, who has been developing into a star franchise player of KT, and Tusin's aggressive style seems to match really well with aiming. So I would say it comes down to whether they decide, because SMAP had synergy with both Kuro and Yukao in different periods of his career. And I was, even though they seem to be also experimenting with Sohan, if SMAP can reach 70% of his potential, SMAP is the one that should be starting on the top lane. So I will say it comes down to who starts on the mid lane. But I don't know, I actually saw a surprising amount of hope from KT, especially in the last series, because even on the games that KT ended up losing, they decided to be extremely decisive and drag the game much longer than they should have ended. And this was against Gen.G, who had built up their synergy throughout the entire spring split. They brought out a new roster, and I get that some shot calling or team synergy can be shaky, but they had a decent series. So I would, trying not to get excited, I would say that this KT team is a playoffs team.
Whoa.
Wait a minute. You say not get excited, but to make playoffs, that's actually quite a jump up, isn't it? There's a lot of teams that could be in. Let me see. So top 5 make playoffs, yeah? So let's go through it. So T1, Gen.G, DRX, Damwon. You're putting KT as the 5th. So you're putting them above Afreeca, Hanwha Life, Esports. You want to go with that?
To be honest, it's not crazy.
It's not crazy, but you should go with it. I'm checking. I want to see if she's putting her money in.
Is the highest that they could possibly be assumed to get.
All right.
It is a very specific standing.
Yeah. Because, I think, Damwon, DRX, T1, and Gen.G look just a notch above KT at the moment. I think KT do have some really interesting aspects, though. Like, you were talking about the synergy between Smeb and Kuro. You have to remember that Kuro played with on Afreeca with Aiming and Tucson while they were together. Like, this is just the bottom side of the map of an Afreeca team. I think the big problem is Bono. Like, Bono is such a coin flip every single time. Sometimes he looks amazing, and actually he had a really good split in the spring, and I'd almost forgotten that he was just an Inter the year before, and like most of his games when he was playing on BBQ, like, this guy was terrible. And I don't want to throw that around, but then their other option is Malrung, and Malrung is like, here, I served you an early game, I'm going to go off for lunch, like, that's the type of player that he is. And I think KT needs another, I don't know, I hate talking about like teams needing to have roster changes, because I actually think working on the roster that you have is the best move you can make. Because it takes so long for everyone to learn about each other, right? And you need to have an actual team, and which is, I think, lost a little bit in League of Legends. But we're not going to go into that. I think that, like, Bono is just, it's so hard to get behind this team when there is just no consistency coming out of the jungle whatsoever. Even if there is Smeb, Kuro, Tucson, like some of the rocks of teams that they've been on previously, Kuro, especially when it was back in China, he was amazingly consistent over there. And it's something that Kramer's now doing, which is really interesting as well. Like, people have just spread their wings from Afreeca and have decided to go and carry China. But I don't know what they're going to do about the jungle. Ashley, what are they going to do about the jungle?
I don't know. Like, I don't rate Bono as low as you do, but I think there could still work around Bono. That is just my own personal opinion. I personally don't think they're going to get Tarzan. I know that I'm only bringing it up just because, that has been a discussion that's been storming over so many different Reddit posts. Personally, I don't think they're going to get KT Tarzan, but surprise me, I don't know. But I think that they might try with Bono until the end of the split.
Listen, if they get Tarzan and try and redeem him, that is just like they're trying to break our hearts again. It's like, do you want to hurt me? Why are you doing this to me? Like, what did I ever do to you? You know, like, give me a break. I can't lie, I'd be in on that though.
Top side of the map, isn't it? It's like Smeb, Tarzan, Kuro. Like, there's your heart would just break. All of these players, man.
How about this?
Even
the most KT thing ever.
And even Tucson.
Yeah, 100%.
He has a redemption arc himself.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
I noticed. Fantastic, by the way. I think he's really, really good.
I was looking here on the matchups for this next week, and basically, if we look at it right, logically, I'm thinking the game of the week must be Damwon versus Gen.G. This is like the marquee matchup, right? These are obviously two of the top teams. I'm putting top in inverted commas if you're Gen.G at the moment, but eventually they should be two of the top teams. And obviously it'll be a good chance to see where Damwon is at. Maybe just give us a little bit of thoughts on this match, both of you, and then we'll wrap on that.
Oh, do you want me to go first?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, I can take this one. This is super hype. You're exactly right. I think like you'd look at look for a marquee matchup, and I think that if you hadn't seen week one, you probably wouldn't put the Damwon Gen.G series there, but maybe you would. I mean, there's a few others that aren't necessarily as exciting. But damn, especially like with you look at the mid lane matchup, like B2D versus Showmaker, both of them in massive form. B2D has been picking up player of the games, even though he in playoffs and things like that, it looked like B2D really didn't have himself together. But some of the games at MSC was absolutely fantastic. But Showmaker is in outstanding form at the moment, and I really want to see that mid matchup to make sure that we can truly understand the power of this solo queue Showmaker lord of the mid lane that we've been seeing. And this is now a big test for Clid to be able to actually play against a team that looked extraordinarily well and not, shit the bed.
And I do wonder, Rascal.
Oh yeah, true.
Sorry.
And the top side's super exciting too.
Yeah.
Right.
Because honestly, on that last series that Gen.G won, Rascal I think was actually the best player on their roster.
Yeah, I said this.
Okay, maybe not.
Maybe not
because maybe not because BDD also looked great on Azir. That is true. But if you look at the whole series, I would say Rascal was the best looking top player on that roster, and him going against Nuguri. Despite some inconsistency, he was voted as the best top laner in the spring split. So I think the matchup is super high. So it's almost like a clash of styles, like Damwon Gaming, being unapologetic on their newfound aggression, and Gen.G, who have looked a bit undecided on adopting the new aggression style or going back to their focus on the AD carry post 30-minute game. So I almost feel like it's like a clash of styles in a way. And given that both teams still look like top teams in the LCK, it will be difficult to predict who comes out, but it will be I hope it's a 3-game series. I'll put it that way.
I think you have to give it to, as far as the favorite for the series, I think you have to give it to Damwon after their first week. I don't think you can look at Gen.G's games and be like, oh yeah, I feel confident that they're going to be able to take down a team that 2-0-2-0'd very easily with a very understandable win condition, and they played to their goals. And I think regardless of who their enemies were, the way Damwon played was really impressive. Whereas Gen.G, it felt like they won games by defaulting back to a style that they used to win with, and they were just good at knowing how to do that, but they weren't actually able to adapt to the new style that they're trying to employ. Does that make sense?
That makes complete sense.
This video was kindly supported by Alexander Rao, Bobby, Dean Tanglis, Istar, JDubs, Jensen Goh, the Puyallup Tribe, Soliko, Spencer Green, Tobias Bernasconi, Xinged, and a special thanks, as always, goes out to my main man, Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Maybe you want to ask me a question in those AMAs I do each month. Do you want teasers for who's going to appear next on my content? Maybe you want to take part in one of those lengthy discussions about esports with me. Well, if so, then put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.